This little boy was staring blankly as two strangers in front of him spoke in a very peculiar way. All Diablo Von Fear could think at that moment was, what the hell? Why couldn't he speak and could only say Abu Abu? 66,666 years ago, the legendary battle between the dark magician Diablo Von Spear and the 12 angels broke out, and good ultimately triumphed. Diablo Von Spear, covered in wounds, lay in the middle of the 12 angels' magic circle. Before being sealed, he shouted frantically, "Go ahead and seal me. But when I awaken, I will drown you all. All of you will wish for death, and you will have to beg for it." After Diablo Von Peer finished his speech, the 12 angels sealed him. Just as Diablo Von Peer had said, he would return. After 66,666 years of wandering, he found a crack in that endless space, slipped through it, and was reborn as Jamie Welltone, the eldest son of a count's family in the kingdom of Siam. And so, Diablo Volt grew up as Jamie Welltone, a true nobleman, and it has now been 9 years. Jamie Welltone was cold and silent. Then he sighed and gazed into the distance. It was another tiring day for him. The old maid entered with a smile. "Young master." "Hello," Jamie Welltone replied with a friendly smile. The maid asked why he was up so early again. "Because I want to see the sunrise and enjoy its beauty." The smooth-as-oil answer that Jamie had practiced for the past 9 years made the nanny sigh in admiration. After that, she helped Jamie change his clothes to go see his parents. Standing before the dining room door, Jamie Welltone took a deep breath, as if preparing for battle. His battlefield was these 3 people, all looking at him with eyes full of love. "Good morning, my dear." "Good morning, dear mother," Jamie Welltone immediately replied with the biggest smile he could muster. The Count and Countess looked at their 2 children before them and couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh, our children are so cute." "I think they're cute because they take after you, my love," said Jamie's mother, Servalt, the only daughter of the Great Vale family. And Jamie's father is the great sword master, Count Agino Welltone, one of the 5 greatest swordsmen in the kingdom. Cold on the outside, but a perfect, ideal husband to his wife and children. And so, at every meal, Jamie had to endure another dish, the public displays of affection from his parents. The last character in Jamie's noisy house is his younger sister, Sarah Welltone. The adorable little girl fed a piece of meat to Jamie. He ate it with relish, then patted her head to thank her. Then, to complete the act, Jamie fed Sarah her favorite food under the loving gazes of Mr. and Mrs. Welltone. Jamie tried to turn away to hide his expression. "This is so damn annoying." Jamie was just waiting for the meal to end so he could return to his room and be his true self. A notorious dark magician like him could never get used to a family so full of love. Fortunately, his body was older now, so Jamie could speak fluently, unlike before when he had to act cute by lisping. Even so, Jamie still liked living in this mansion. He could do many things freely and even had his own private library. The important thing is that he's currently weak as hell and no longer has the terrifying power he had 66,666 years ago. Jamie could only summon this pitch-black little thing, black. He often squeezed it so hard that it burst like a water balloon. Right now, those idiot gods are still alive, and they're still exploiting their followers, living like a bunch of parasites. In this era, dark magic doesn't exist. All Jamie can do is create this little servant, Black, to run errands for him. Thinking of those hypocritical 12 angels made Jamie furious. "Just you wait, they'll become stronger and eliminate you one by one." "Young master, it's time to read children's books with the madam," the maid announced, poking her head in and wondering why Jamie was still sitting motionless. A second later, Jamie's face returned to that of a perfectly obedient son, while inwardly he cursed. "Damn it, I'd rather have stayed sealed and found a way out later than have to act like a cute little kid every day." In the common room, Jamie's mother and Sarah were waiting for him. He put on an adorably sweet face to please his mother. "Which book will you read to us today?" The 2 of them stared wide-eyed at Jamie's angelic beauty, then habitually hugged him tightly, screaming like die-hard fans meeting their idol. Only Jamie was gritting his teeth and enduring it. Then Jamie's mother pulled out the book The Sage Hades and read to the 2 of them. Sarah had already dozed off, and Jamie was getting drowsy too. But when Jamie's mother closed the book, Jamie immediately looked up with an excited expression as if he had heard the whole story. I want to become a great mage like Sir Hades. Jamie's mother encouraged him, not just because she was his mother, but because Jamie was truly gifted, to the point where he had already defeated 3 of his magic tutors. Jamie suspected she was teasing him for chasing away the 3 tutors she had found for him. But that thought was quickly dismissed when his mother patted his head and reassured him that his father had gone to find the greatest mage to teach him. After their talk, Jamie asked for permission to go to the library. Before he left, his mother wanted to give him a warm hug. For a second, Jamie sighed wearily, then closed his eyes and rushed in to hug her so he could get to the library quickly. Jamie's mother hugged him tightly. "Oh, our little Jamie is so adorable. Come on, play with mommy. Don't go to the library, my love." Jamie's inner voice screamed, but only we could hear it. "For the love of God, please stop." Finally, Jamie was released and returned to his room full of books. He had studied all the books on mana, and even this last one was useless to him. Thinking that it was almost mealtime again made Jamie tired. I wish I only had to eat 1 meal a day with them. On the way to the dining room, Jamie came face to face with a silver-haired mage. The old man was admiring his house, marveling at how his father displayed ancient masterpieces as mere decorations. Jamie didn't know who he was, but the old man had an abundant amount of mana, like a violent storm. He had to be at least a 7th circle mage, but how did he get here without anyone guiding him? Was it teleportation? Or maybe the old man broke in, but he was walking around so comfortably in the house of a sword master. Finally, Jamie asked for the old man's identity. In the old mage's eyes, who was also sizing up Jamie, he could only marvel. As expected, a tiger father begets a tiger son. Jamie is surely a genius. Jamie was annoyed when he didn't get an answer. If he were the same person he was 66,666 years ago, this old man would have to kneel immediately, but now he could only talk to him. But the old man's nonchalant, provocative attitude and his probing of Jamie's mana annoyed him. He gathered mana in his hand, preparing to strike the old man. The old mage was still assessing Jamie. A mere 9-year-old boy with such abundant mana, and his straightforward demeanor made the old man curious about his power. So, he also gathered his mana, wanting to face him. Jamie went crazy and cursed. "This son of a bitch dares to test me? Let's see if he can defeat Diablo Von Fear, the one who nearly defeated the gods in the past." In terms of age, it wouldn't be wrong for that old man to call him ancestor. Boom. A laser beam, the condensed essence of Jamie's magic, shot towards the old mage, but he was completely unharmed. Jamie was thoroughly embarrassed. He knew the old man was stronger, but it was unbelievable that his magic had no effect at all. The old mage, on the other hand, was extremely excited by the power of a 9-year-old boy like him. So, he retaliated with an amount of mana at least 10 times greater than Jamie's. Jamie bit his lip. Damn it, that old man was completely unscathed. But it didn't matter, the old man's magic couldn't touch him either. The old mage was astonished to see Jamie standing indifferently before him. Because right at that moment, Jamie's father appeared and sliced the old man's attack in two. Jamie's father was annoyed. "Old man, you've gone too far, daring to touch my precious son." Jamie immediately slipped into the role of a weak child, sniffling with teary eyes. "I am okay." Agino froze when he saw Jamie's frail appearance and shot a death glare at the old mage, Marquis Linmi. Seeing Jamie giving him the middle finger after tattling to his dad, Marquis Linmi burst out laughing. He had never met a child as mature and interesting as Jamie. The old man's choking laughter made Agino's blood boil, and he immediately dragged him into a private room to talk. As soon as he sat down, Jamie's father warned the Marquis for daring to touch the heir of Weltone, and more importantly, his precious son. "I know," Marquis Linmi said nonchalantly, taking a sip of tea. "Damn it, if you knew, why did you still attack?" Agino's entire body radiated killing intent, forcing Marquis Linmi to stop joking. The old man got to the main point, Jamie's talent. Agino was irritable. He had summoned the old man to teach Jamie magic, yet he attacked him instead. He must have had some dark intentions. But the old Marquis, Linmi, suddenly refused Jamie's father's request. After 3 magic tutors were schooled by Jamie, Agino had sought out old Linmi, one of the strongest 8th circle mages, to teach Jamie. And yet, now Linmi refused to teach Jamie, forcing Agino to reconsider his son's talent. As if reading his mind, Linmi explained his reason. He admitted he wasn't qualified to teach Jamie. Agino couldn't believe his ears. If even an 8th circle mage couldn't teach him, who could he find? The next piece of news was even more shocking. Linmi said that Jamie could read all of his spells. He was so certain it couldn't touch him that he didn't even bother to move or blink. In his assessment, if Jamie's body were stronger, he would already be a 4th circle mage. But for now, Jamie can only self-study up to the 3rd circle. Jamie is truly a monster. He doesn't need a teacher. As long as Agino supports him, Jamie will perfect his skills on his own. This could be the birth of a legendary 9th circle mage. Agino was stunned, his mind solely focused on the fact that Jamie could become a 9th circle mage, not noticing that old Linmi was preparing to leave. Before leaving, he also said that the entire world might be turned upside down by Jamie's talent. To him, this was an incredibly interesting matter, but Agino remained silent, leaning back in his chair and sighing. At that moment, someone else was also sighing wearily. It was none other than Jamie, who had just been released by his mother. After hearing what old Linmi did to him, Jamie's mother went frantic, checking his entire body to see if he was missing any flesh. That ordeal felt even longer than when he was sealed, yet he was still satisfied to have met a genuine mage. That was real magic. If it were in his era, it would surely be incredibly powerful. But above all was his old man, Agino. Only someone that badass deserved to be called father by an old man over 6,000 years old like him. What's so funny? The voice of old Linmi came from behind him. Jamie gave him a judgmental look, unable to believe this old man had snuck into his room without him noticing. Jamie yelled in his face, "What the hell are you doing here?" Old Linmi cackled when he saw Jamie's surprised expression. Now that's the face of a 9-year-old boy. Finding out that old Linmi had teleported in here, Jamie was annoyed. "I thought my old man would beat him to a pulp." "Well, he must be pretty strong to teleport so skillfully." Old Linmi looked at him slyly, unable to believe a child like Jamie could be such a good actor. Jamie dusted himself off and stood up. "Of course, I have to act differently with my family than with a rude stranger like you." Old Linmi laughed heartily again, then looked at him with regret. "If only I were stronger, I would have had the chance to knock you on the head." Jamie shuddered at the old man's gaze. What a pervert. Is he planning to kidnap and sell me? But no. Old Linmi handed him a magic book along with the words, "Your magic is outdated." What a baby. Jamie felt so humiliated, wishing he could find a hole to crawl into to hide his shame. That magic book contained all the spells created by old man Linmi, and Jamie was the first person to learn it. Hearing that, Jamie couldn't contain his excitement. It was the first time he had a book from a living, high-level mage. Before leaving, old man Linmi didn't forget to place his expectations on Jamie, hoping that next time they met, he wouldn't need Agino to take the blow for him again. Jamie felt that meeting that old man wasn't a waste of time. Now was the time to devour this book. According to Linmi, absorbing mana was a technique of breathing through the mouth and then absorbing the mana into the heart. It was the most effective method known, but the truth was that it had a major limitation. Old man Linmi had said his magic was outdated, so Jamie had some expectations for his technique, but it surpassed all his imaginings. His technique was brilliant, but also very difficult to execute. One had to feel each mana particle and absorb it through the skin, and it had to be done with absolute precision. Jamie lay on his bed, pondering. How many people could possibly do that? It would be very difficult for him to replace his old technique. But Jamie already met the 2 conditions for the new technique, and above all, he was Diablo 40k. It seemed the old man Demi had enlightened Jamie quite a bit. Now, it was time for him to put it into practice, one step at a time. Jamie snapped his fingers to summon his pitch-black subordinate, Black. It would handle the task of breaking down the mana particles, which was the first condition of this technique. This was quite difficult as it required adjusting the size and position perfectly, but Black handled it all thanks to the soul contract it had with him. The second condition was even easier. While the heart's mana absorption is limited, Jamie could simply store mana in other parts of his body. This meant he had no limits whatsoever. The next morning, Jamie didn't come down for breakfast, so his nanny called Agino up to check on him. The two stood curiously outside the door, witnessing this extraordinary sight. Jamie's mana was moving around him with precision. Agino knew Marquis Linmi had guided Jamie a little, but this sight was truly surreal. He never expected his adorable little son to possess such an innate talent. Agino told the nanny to let Jamie finish concentrating, and for convenience, he assigned a few servants to attend to him. The nanny obeyed. She couldn't see Jamie's mana, so she thought he was just lost in his own world. Agino left with a mind full of thoughts. He was slightly disappointed that his only son wasn't a swordsman, but having his maternal family's genes was good too. That's my son, Agino thought proudly, imagining the day his family would have a 9th-class mage. The entire family name would surely go down in the Empire's history. Half a day later, Jamie finally opened his eyes and came to his senses. He jumped up in joy. I did it. Jamie had spent the most time on the step of separating the mana elements. It was as difficult and complex as 8th grade chemistry, but if he failed once, he would do it 100 times, until he finally succeeded. In any case, Jamie now felt he was on a completely new level, far different from the Jamie of a day ago. It could be said he had reached the 4th class mage level. So damn close. I almost reached the 5th class. Jamie's sigh made Black curious, but he wouldn't destroy and rebuild this body since it was already weak. Black landed on Jamie's shoulder, as if to comfort him. Jamie also understood he was still young and there was no need to rush. He just needed to train slowly. Jamie intended to go see Agino, so he cast an invisibility spell on Black and instructed it to hide its mana well, as he didn't want his father to find out about it. Jamie was quite proud of his 4th class invisibility spell. He himself could barely see the little black furball. Jamie had it all figured out. With his magic, his old man definitely wouldn't be able to see Black. From now on, he could summon Black anywhere he wanted. In the reception room, Agino was speaking with a member of the Janus cult. The man spoke to him with a cunning expression. Agino allowed this cult to operate because he believed it would be a great encouragement to the people of his domain. He intended to make Janus the largest cult, starting from his own territory. The cultist understood that Agino was subtly asserting his authority. Faced with the Count's warning, he felt intimidated. He had heard the rumors, but the atmosphere now was incredibly tense. After their conversation, Agino allowed him to leave, not forgetting to sarcastically wish him a safe return. It was a charade of hypocrisy between the two. The moment the man left, Agino's friendly smile vanished, replaced by a cold, murderous expression. Jamie, who was about to greet his father, spotted the Janus cultist. He recognized the symbol on his hat, a crescent moon with a golden cross in the center. Jamie had overheard the entire conversation with Agino. He couldn't understand what the hell the Janus cult was doing here, in his father's territory. Biting his nails, Jamie pondered why Agino would allow them to operate, and why it had to be Janus of all cults. To take action now, he could only rely on Agino, as he was the lord of the entire territory. Jamie needed to investigate, and then have his old man kick that Janus cult out. My parents will handle everything. Jamie just needed to continue playing the role of the good, obedient son. In the tea room, Jamie was happily reporting his training progress to Agino, who was equally interested. One thing he was certain of was that Jamie loved magic. However, as a father, Agino wanted his son to be able to grow up like a normal boy. Jamie was a talented child, but he knew better than anyone that the life of a genius is the hardest in this world. When a child prodigy grows up, everyone will be jealous of them. When they mature, they will be relentlessly attacked. Agino worried if his little son would be able to endure it. So, he told Jamie not to push himself too hard. He could support him, but he didn't want his son to live a difficult life. Jamie laughed and told him not to worry. His son was an old man over 6,000 years old who had even fought against gods. Hearing that, Agino felt relieved. Only now did he notice Jamie's terrifyingly immense mana flow. On top of that, he was still continuously absorbing more. WTF, hold on a second. In theory, mana could only be stored in the heart and had its limits. Agino hesitantly asked Jamie, "Don't tell me you've already mastered everything from the book that old man Lemmy gave you?" "That's right," Jamie replied. Not only that, he even improved upon it to create a pro version. Agino broke out in a cold sweat. He had no idea what that Marquis had done to his son to turn him into a mana-absorbing furnace in just a single day. Thinking this, Agino truly began to hope his son would become one of the legendary ninth-class mages. He gave a foolish laugh. As a father, his own talent didn't even amount to 1/10 of Jamie's. Seeing Agino's foolish laugh, Jamie was confused. Is my old man having an internal monologue? Agino burst out laughing. I am so proud of you today, my son. To show his affection, he patted Jamie's head. He gritted his teeth and endured it. Damn it, he was old enough to be Agino's great-grandfather. Yet here he was, getting his head patted like a puppy. How humiliating. By the way, is that your summoned spirit? Agino asked casually, pointing at Black. Only Jamie and Black jumped, their hearts pounding in their chests. What the hell? He was sure Head made Black invisible. How can Agino still see him? While the two were freaking out, Agino cheerfully described Black's fluffy body, saying how incredibly cute it looked. Mentally defeated, Jamie lied that Head made it look like a bat, but internally he was screaming about his father's power. Don't tell me he's already discovered that I use dark magic. Contrary to Jamie's fears, Agino hugged him tightly, overflowing with pride. Oh my God, my son is a genius. I'm so proud to be your son. I mean, to be your father. Somehow, Jamie managed to escape that hellish room. This house was so damn annoying. That night, Jamie snuck out. He had to find out the reason that despicable Janus cult had shown up here. With the pitch-black wings formed by Black's transformation, Jamie quickly left the Count's estate. In a small hut, two young men were having a heart-to-heart talk. The two belonged to the Levant criminal organization. The purple-haired man, Philip, was praying for his ancestors' protection. In contrast, Jean was extremely frustrated. He realized their boss was using half their organization for his own private purposes. Even though he was a criminal, he still had some humanity. He couldn't just turn a blind eye and engage in human trafficking for money. Philip mumbled, "If we're lucky, we might be able to escape." "Not a chance," Jean retorted. "Everyone knows Count Welltone loves children and his own kids. If he finds out we're trafficking children right in his territory, we'll all be screwed." Philip remained stubborn. The boss said we wouldn't get caught. But Jean was still terrified. The Count is a sword master, you know. No matter how much that guy Honey protects us, we still can't escape from Welltone. Philip sighed. "So are you in or out? Just say it." "I'm running away," Jean declared. "Okay, I'm with you." Philip continued. "That's the law of the underworld. If it gets too tough, you get out." And so, the two began to plan. They were sure the organization would hunt them to the death. Philip said it was better to try and die than to just stand by and wait to be killed. "It's not like we can do anything else, is it?" Jean sneered. "Seriously, what kind of moron came up with this plan to traffic people here? Is his brain filled with water or something?" Their conversation reached Jamie's ears. He stepped out from the shadows, causing the two men to jump to their feet, on guard. Who are you?" "That's a fun question. I don't even know myself," Jamie said with a sinister grin. "If you want talk, then die, you brat." Jean and Philip charged at Jamie. He vanished instantly, leaving the two looking around frantically. "This was a physical fight. Why are you using magic? That's playing dirty as hell. What was that interesting thing you two were talking about?" Jamie's chilling voice sent shivers down their spines. Before they could even react, Jamie had already manipulated their minds. And so, the two men knelt before Jamie, not to beg for peace, but to recount the entire story from beginning to end. Jamie couldn't understand if these guys had brains, or if they ate snacks instead of meals to come up with a plan to traffic humans in his father's territory. Jamie gritted his teeth. First the Janus cult, and now these guys. This is getting so annoying. He wondered what their boss was thinking to accept such an offer. Did none of them know the rumors about his father? Suddenly, Jamie had a bad feeling about this. He hypnotized the two of them to turn themselves into his family's knights and confess the entire plan. Jamie thought this was the quickest way to put an end to their plan. Now he would go home, get some sleep, and wake up in the morning to enjoy the show. Jamie told Black to turn into wings and take him back to his bed. But as he turned, a body flew past him. It was Philip, covered in blood and tears. There was a massive hole right through his chest, and Jean's entire body was charred. Both of them collapsed right before Jamie's eyes. "You idiots." A loud laugh echoed, while others told him to keep his voice down before the guards arrived. Jamie was enraged. His plan had been ruined by some madman who appeared out of nowhere. Unforgivable. Jamie called upon the souls of Jean and Philip. He would let them live a little longer. They had to complete their unfinished mission before they were allowed to die. The man who had been laughing like a maniac appeared. It was the scar-faced Honey, who had been hunting for Jean and Philip. Ignoring the fact that Jamie was healing them, Honey ordered his men to drag the two back for disposal. Tears streamed down Philip's face as he unconsciously pleaded, "Save me." Jamie was furious. "Damn this bastard." Boom. A gash opened on Jamie's head. Honey gleefully rained down attacks, piercing through his body. "Die, you runt." He frantically unleashed magic until the spot where Jamie stood was nothing but a smoking, charred lump. A servant seemed to notice something unusual. Honey immediately turned and cursed him to his face, certain that he had destroyed Jamie with his own hands. "Are you sure, boy?" Jamie whispered closely into his ear, his smile utterly horrifying. "I want to ask, was it fun killing your own subordinates?" Honey's eyes widened, wondering what the hell this kid was to still be alive and surrounded by dark energy on top of that. Jamie, who had appeared before him at some point, was just a measly third-class mage, yet he acted like a gang boss. "Damn you, shorty. He'll kill you." Honey summoned a third-class fire explosion. Although it couldn't compare to his idol, he was sure it could incinerate Jamie. An explosion erupted with light, smoke, and dust. All that remained was Jamie's arrogant voice. Truly, the youth are so inexperienced. Everything was in Jamie's hands. The winner takes all. How could he possibly lose? Old Honey fell soullessly, face planting on the ground. Seeing their boss defeated so easily, his underlings decided to flee. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing is the best. Jamie ignored them. Now, he was focused on manipulating the mind of this old geezer. A stream of dark energy enveloped Honey, and in a second, Jamie completed his brainwashing. He walked over and grabbed the long-haired man lying on the ground. He had now completely become Jamie's slave, obeying his every command, no matter how small. After interrogating Honey, Jamie returned to these two unfortunate young men. Jean looked up, unable to believe that the one who had overpowered their whole group was a 9-year-old kid who likes listening to his mother's fairy tales. Jamie angrily warned them to watch their mouths, or he'd make them log out for real. This was a soul contract. Whether they liked it or not, as long as the contract was in effect, their souls and lives belonged to Jamie. That was dark magic. Jamie suddenly remembered something and told them he wasn't some demon god or devil, but a dark magician who had been asleep for over 6,000 years. He recalled the pointless conversation with the scar-faced Honey, which had just wasted his time. He could have just reported this human trafficking to his father. So now, Jamie had no idea what to do with this scar-faced slave. He was a third-class mage, so normally, Jamie would turn him into a soulless corpse to command, while his soul would rot away. But the most important problem was the appearance of a soulless corpse. It looked disgusting as hell. How was it any different from a beggar? How could it carry out missions? So the only way was to devour him completely. Jamie's smile gradually became inhuman. Let's see what's on the menu for tonight's late-night snack. After devouring all of heinous magic, Jamie wiped his mouth like a nobleman. Although it contained many impurities, it was better than nothing. Returning to his two darlings, Jamie saw they had been resurrected for a while, but they probably wouldn't last long. Time to rely on the almighty Drake. After all, those two guys still had to sell themselves to capitalism even after death. It had been a long time since Jamie had used necromancy. It was used to resurrect the dead. But in reality, they were just empty, moving shells. After all, resurrecting the dead goes against the laws of nature. Jamie looked at the two guys before him and declared, "You two were dead, but at this moment, you are not. From now on, you will be my loyal slaves and live once more." Then it was Graves' turn. It shot a bolt of lightning down onto Jean and Philip. Reject death and rise. Jamie gritted his teeth. Because it had been too long, the souls of the two men had gone deep into the spirit realm. Jamie channeled more dark magic to summon the two men's souls back to the mortal world. The pain could be seen on Jean and Philip's faces. Then came a deafening explosion and their screams. Jamie waited for the result. Jean and Philip knelt respectfully. "Sir, what are your orders?" What the hell? Something was wrong. It wasn't because they were kneeling and still almost as tall as him, but because both of them were emitting dark energy as clear as day. Did he miss a step? Drake thought Jamie was blaming it, so it squeaked, "Pie, pie," aggrieved. He got annoyed. "I wasn't talking about you." Drake obediently rolled into his hand, but of course, it couldn't escape its punishment. Jamie stretched the black fluff ball to vent his anger. Even though he knew there might be some failure, he was still pissed off. Drake's mouth was warped from being stretched, and he said he wasn't blaming it. Men are such a pain. Looking back at the two software-glitched underlings, Jamie didn't know what to do with them. Maybe he should donate them to the human traffickers? It was all because of the dark energy emanating from them, like they had body odor. Otherwise, they would have turned out much better. Suddenly, Brad looked around and bit Jamie's neck. He threw it away. "Damn it. We're not lovers. Why are you suddenly sniffing me?" But Brad just wanted Jamie to pay attention to what it was about to do. Suck up all the dark energy around the other two. Jamie was surprised that his underling was so omnipotent. All the dark energy was swallowed by Drake. Its mouth puffed up from being so full. Then, it couldn't help but let out a continuous stream of farts, but luckily, they didn't smell. Only after they were cleaned up and no longer smelled did Jamie decide to give them orders. The farting sound was gone, so Jamie checked on Blake, who was now lying in a heap on the ground with a full belly. He stroked its round body. "Black, amazing, good job, kid." The next ritual after necromancy is naming. He decided to use the names Jean and Philip for convenience. "Now awaken." The two young men startled, as if waking from a long dream. Both looked around in confusion. Hearing Jamie's voice, Jean trembled in fear at the terrifying amount of mana he was emitting, just like the villains from the fairy tales he heard as a child, a godslayer. Jamie's mere presence was enough to turn a grown man into a scaredy cat. That was exactly what Jean was thinking. "What's wrong?" Jamie spoke, his whole body emitting a terrifying amount of dark energy. Philip swallowed hard, gathered all his courage, and shouted, "I don't know if you are a god or a devil, but I don't feel like you are human." "Well now, this boy is interesting. Philip's attitude is not one a slave should have. I must have gotten the spell's formula wrong." To correct his improper attitude, Jamie flicked his finger, and the man's entire body slammed to the ground. A cracking sound was heard. It was unclear if it was the tiles cracking or Philip's jaw breaking. Jamie approached and warned him, "Only this once, and never again. A dog should not bark at its master." The more important matter now was their mission. Jamie just needed the two men to investigate the Janus Church and gather information. Also, bring one person from the human trafficking organization back here for some shady business. Jean and Philip bowed their heads respectfully, not daring to make a sound, until Jamie left completely without a word. Both breathed a sigh of relief when Jamie left. Then their eyes met, and they immediately understood they had to carry out the mission. Pie. Drake frowned, questioning Jamie. He asserted that he had already tightened security, so those two wouldn't dare to betray him. As for the human trafficking, his father would handle it. If it were allowed to continue, he would eventually deal with them himself. As he was rambling, someone suddenly bumped into him hard from behind, startling him. More importantly, he hadn't noticed their presence at all. Jamie turned around irritably to curse them. "Are you blind or something?" "Huh, kid." The kid on the ground yelled in frustration, "You're a brat too." Jamie laughed foolishly. He had forgotten he was in the body of a 9-year-old young master. Drake had made a nest on Jamie's head to hide his hair color, the unique characteristic of the Welltone family. Anyway, Jamie didn't want to argue with a 9-year-old kid, so he decided to leave. The boy behind him muttered, "Damn, how can a kid act so grown up when he doesn't even have a single gray hair on his head?" Black suddenly pulled Jamie back. Both kids were stunned. Jamie couldn't understand why his little one was suddenly so stubborn. Could it be because that kid mocked its jet black color? Jamie got annoyed. Looks like he had to go back and teach this Drake kid a lesson. How dare it stop its master? Watch your mouth if you don't want to log out instantly. Jamie glared a warning at the kid, who was so scared he almost peed his pants and ran for his life. Jamie sighed. That kid Drake was even more of a handful than him. But the annoying part was that Jamie had to indulge it to get a flight home. Back in his room, it was time for Jamie to lecture this shiny black furball. It seemed very repentant. Jamie threatened to never summon Black again if it acted so presumptuously. Seeing that the scolding was over, Black became cheerful again, promising to do it again next time. Jamie flopped onto the bed, exhausted. This body was too weak and couldn't handle using so much magic. Anyway, Jamie was striving for a carefree life, preparing for his journey when the last god, Janus, appeared. Just thinking of Janus made Jamie unable to contain his anger. But it was fine. Even if they brought their entire clan, he would drive them all away. Where's the boss? Jean returned to the hideout and started hunting for Honey. The purple-haired guy saw him like he was seeing a ghost, because old Honey had said he'd personally finish them all off. A powerful punch shattered the wall behind Pep. Jean didn't like to waste words. Either you talk, or you're coming with me to the station. Pep was terrified of Jean's sudden increase in strength. More importantly, the other members would cause a commotion if they saw Jean's ghost appear. Based on Pep's speculation, they might all have been defeated already. So he immediately raised his hands in surrender, saying he didn't know where Jean's boss was being held. Really? A voice that terrified Pep even more. It was Philip, who had died earlier. Pep tried his best not to tremble. Of course. You can ask anyone. Philip was annoyed. He needed the leader to carry out the mission Jamie had given them, because he had all the information about the town, which likely included the Janus Church. Philip used a hellish tone to ask Pep about Honey again. Pep swallowed in thought. He had to choose his words carefully now, or he'd lose his head. Perp quickly made an excuse that Honey was addicted to booze and women, so he was probably partying in a bar right now. Jean found that reasonable, so the two decided to go to the bar. Perp sighed in relief after passing this hurdle, but a second later, he took a punch to the face from Jean. Jean wondered why they didn't bring this Perp guy back to their tiny master. If they did, they would need to hide Perp from the organization. Philip decided to lock Perp in their warehouse for safety, so the two left with their prize, Perp, in hand. Just then, a small figure entered the house full of corpses and blood. He shivered. It seemed like everyone was dead. He thought he would be beaten for not meeting yesterday's quota, but there was no one here to beat him. So, taking this chance, the boy ran far away before he could become a suspect. The next morning, CEO Jamie woke up in his 200-square-meter bed. He sighed, not from exhaustion, but because it was almost time for breakfast with his loving family. On the way, Jamie decided to unsummon Black because his great father could see through it. Taking a deep breath, Jamie walked in. "Father, Mother, did you sleep well?" Agino smiled and greeted him, but he felt something was missing. Where was his gorgeous mother? "Here I am, darling." Jamie's mother jumped out from behind the door. "Peekaboo." Jamie pretended to be surprised. "Wow, where were you hiding, Mom? I didn't see you at all." The truth was, he knew her hiding spot from years of this. Was my little Jamie scared? A little, yes. But I'm very happy I caught my beloved mother. And so, Jamie's mother was once again moved by his cuteness. Sarah also ran out from somewhere and hugged Jamie tightly, not letting go. Moments like these made Jamie want to be sealed for another few hundred years. After a few minutes of affection, Jamie was finally able to sit at the dining table. Jamie's mother hugged Sarah because the little girl was so adorable. Jamie also wanted to pinch his little sister's cheeks. They were surely as soft as a cushion. Damn it. He slammed his face on the table to get rid of that thought. He had grown too used to this peaceful life. But in the end, Jamie couldn't resist holding Sarah in his arms. Everyone eventually falls for cuteness. Suddenly, Agino started talking about tomorrow, leaving Jamie confused. It turned out his mother had forgotten to inform him because he had made her worry all night. Jamie suddenly realized that his mother must have been scared to tears after the incident where he absorbed mana like a starving man. "I'm sorry," Jamie said dejectedly, feeling remorseful. Of course, his mother didn't blame Jamie. It was just that if he kept pushing himself like that, she would faint in the hallway from excessive worry. Jamie changed the subject to tomorrow's event, and she enthusiastically explained. Their super cute family of 4 would be attending a grand ball hosted by Count Simone and his family. Almost every noble living in the northern part of the Sata Empire had to attend. Although it was Jamie and Sarah's first time attending a ball, their mother was the most excited one. Meanwhile, Jamie's free time was being increasingly cut short. That night, Jamie went out again, taking the opportunity to visit his 2 underlings before his schedule became completely packed. In the same old alley, the 3 of them met again for some shady business. Jamie asked about their work progress. Philip answered worriedly that they couldn't find any information about the Janus cult because it had only recently been established. Jamie understood. Even a member of Levant would find it difficult to get information in just one day. As for the remaining task, Philip brought out a man named Pep. He immediately recognized the characteristic hair color of the Welltone family. According to Philip, Pep was also a member of Levant. He knew that the two of them were going to be eliminated by Honey, which proved he was an insider. But Pep didn't know any valuable information. Jamie sighed. In the end, everything fell to him. After his gag was removed, Pep immediately started screaming, "Please spare me. I don't know anything. If you let me live, I'll gather any information you want." "Hey kid," Jamie spoke. A chill ran down Pep's spine. He felt an endless, evil energy radiating from Jamie. Pep immediately started crying and begging. If he were told to be a dog now, he would bark. Holy cow, this guy talks too much. Jamie cast a spell to shut his mouth, then manipulated his mind to make Pep go to his father and confess. Pep acted like a puppet, carrying out the given command. Jamie told Jean and Philip not to pity him. Sooner or later, he would die at his father's hands before the organization found him. Jamie ordered the two to flee the city. They obeyed without question. Jamie looked at them suspiciously. Why aren't these two chatterboxes questioning the reason today? Both of them bowed their heads and said in unison as if rapping, "The master's command is absolute. We need only obey." Philip had already guessed the reason for Jamie's order. Count Welltone, his father, would surely wipe out Levant. In that case, the existence of these two slaves was no longer significant. More importantly, Jamie had to attend that annoying ball in a few days, so he told his two underlings not to steal his spotlight. Suddenly, Philip called out to him, his face unable to hide a mix of panic and pain. "What have we become?" Philip knew they were both dead. He had accepted that he couldn't be alive as before, but he didn't want to live like this either. Philip accepted the immense power he was given, but the one thing that troubled him was what kind of creature he had become. Jamie asked back, "What exactly are Philip and Jean curious about? Could it be that we've become high-ranking undead?" His clueless question made Jamie burst out laughing uncontrollably. He had never seen anyone adapt as quickly as these two. A normal person would have asked if they had truly become immortal. Philip dazedly thanked him, not expecting that his master could laugh so cheerfully. On the other hand, Jamie was also very interested. Usually, slaves would reject this state because they would lose their humanity and turn into monsters. But these two clueless guys still behaved like living people. Perhaps he had acquired two valuable underlings here. Jamie finally explained. They were just zombies, but their appearance was maintained to look as beautiful as when they were alive because he hated stinking, rotting zombies like in Train to Busan. As for their strength, he had buffed them to be stronger than ordinary people. Philip was disappointed to learn he was just a lowly zombie, but Jamie didn't think so. Depending on their actions, they might even become high-level zombies. And so, the two kids immediately cheered up. A high-level zombie sounded pretty badass. On the way back, Black showed pity for the two, but Jamie found them very interesting. They reminded him of that annoying guy from his past life. That night, a major disturbance occurred at the Welltone estate. A member of Levant, everyone knows who, had reported his own organization. Due to the seriousness of the matter, Agino postponed their departure time to resolve the issue at its root. Therefore, only Jamie and his mother and sister went to Reagan, the largest commercial city in the east. Sitting in the carriage, Jamie observed the scenery. Everything had progressed so remarkably that it couldn't be compared to his legendary era. He didn't even know exactly how many years he had been sealed away. The events of the era after Jamie's death were rewritten in the history books, such as the invasion of the demon tribe and the descent of the demon king. Peace had lasted for several hundred years without any similar incidents occurring. Perhaps he was the one who would end that peace. Thinking of this, Jamie remembered those 12 foolish gods. It had been so long, yet they still couldn't form an alliance. It would be easier for him to defeat them than before. Countless lives had fallen back then, but he didn't need to care. The killing intent radiating from Jamie made Sarah uncomfortable. He immediately stabilized his emotions and used a little magic to soothe his little sister so she could sleep soundly again. First, Jamie had to safely get through this ball before he could plan his next move. After the carriage entered Reagan, Jamie switched on his acting mode, putting on a look of utter amazement at Reagan's beauty. His mother, from inside, introduced Reagan, the largest commercial city in the kingdom, holding a huge flow of money in the economy across the continent. From his research, Jamie knew that Reagan was the biggest factor that made the Seldam kingdom filthy rich. One look at their architecture, which reeked of money, was enough to tell. Their carriage arrived at the Simone residence. Jamie didn't forget his mission. Just thinking about meeting Count Simone makes my heart pound like this. Jamie's mother didn't hesitate to hug him tightly. "Oh, my darling son is so cute. Are you nervous? Then mommy will hold your hand." She thought Jamie respected Count Simone because he was a great mage who had reached the 7th class around his father's age, one of the 2 leaders of the Eastern noble faction alongside Agino, and also the lord of this rich land of Reagan. Simone's magic was like a red lotus, which was also his nickname. It was said to have taken thousands of lives. After hearing that, Jamie wondered what kind of person he was. His mother said with a scary expression, "He has hair as red as blood." What the... Sometimes Jamie was more afraid of his mother's expressions than his father's. He didn't care about the Red Lotus Mage or 7th class. What he cared about was that one of his attacks could take thousands of lives. Jamie would definitely have a chat with Count Simone. Jamie's mother got out of the carriage first. "My dears, follow me now. Take your time." "Yes, ma'am." Jamie followed with a voice so sweet that even he couldn't believe it. A servant respectfully greeted them and led the mother and her 2 children inside. The 3 of them were arranged in a large room to wait until the ball began. Jamie's mother was very comfortable with such thoughtful arrangements. Not only that, but Jamie was also given his own room. At this age, it was rare for children to have separate rooms from their parents. Jamie's mother told him to come back right after unpacking his luggage. Of course, he replied in his usual voice, "Yes, ma'am." Meanwhile, the handmaidens were grooming and preparing Jamie's mother. Although he knew his mother was very beautiful, seeing her so carefully dressed up, Jamie still couldn't help but be impressed. Receiving a compliment from her precious son made her extremely happy, and she couldn't resist wanting to get handsy with Jamie. The handmaidens quickly stopped her before her makeup could smudge and her dress got wrinkled. These were truly Jamie's saviors. At this moment, Sarah was also ready. However, she looked uncomfortable. The little girl's super cute appearance made Jamie's mother go crazy. Jamie also had to admit his little sister looked like a doll. He encouraged Sarah to endure it for a little while. One look at her face showed she wasn't comfortable in this dress that weighed several pounds. Finally, after Jamie got ready, the 3 of them entered the ballroom. The magnificent and luxurious scene astonished Jamie. This was the first time he had attended a party since his reincarnation. A few women started gathering around to praise Jamie's mother. He was annoyed because he knew they were deliberately trying to curry favor with the Weltone family. That flattering expression was unmistakable. Whether in myths or among mortals, one thing always exists: fools who want to flatter the gods. Jamie felt disgusted by this fake behavior. Luckily, his mother was no pushover and easily shooed those sycophants away. "Hello, can everyone hear me?" An MC standing in the middle of the hall spoke up. "On behalf of the family, welcome, everyone, to the ball." That was Ryu Banner, the person responsible for managing the Reagan territory. He announced that the ball would begin soon, so everyone should return to their designated seats. Of course, the party couldn't be without its host. Count Simone, the man with hair as fiery red as blood, entered coolly. "Welcome to the ball. I hope everyone will be comfortable here." Jamie was astonished by his appearance. He couldn't believe this was a 7th class mage. He was surely on par with, or even stronger than, that old man Lemmy. Truly an interesting person. He had caught Jamie's eye. Simone approached Jamie's mother first, greeting her with a polite compliment, then asked about Agino's situation since he didn't see him. Jamie's mother explained about some urgent matters in their territory, but Agino would be arriving at the ball later tonight. Simone glanced at the 2 children. Jamie's mother immediately introduced her 2 darlings. "My dears, greet the Count." Jamie bowed respectfully, using 100% of his acting ability. The picturesque scene made Lady Simone exclaim, "What adorable children." Meanwhile, Count Simone began to scrutinize every inch of Jamie's body. Without hesitation, Jamie displayed his mana, successfully attracting his attention. "Your name is Jamie?" "That's right," he answered enthusiastically. The 2, who had just met, seemed to have known each other for a long time, to the point of being able to read each other's thoughts in their gazes. Count Simone decided to arrange a talk with him later and then left. Jamie achieved his goal. As expected, Count Simone was even better than he had anticipated. The conversation with him would surely yield a lot of useful information. Besides Count Simone, one of his sons also had his eyes on Jamie. Sitting at the banquet table, he proactively spoke up, asking about Jamie in front of Simone. Although Jamie was young, he would become the leader of the Weltons in the future, so he wanted to get acquainted to maintain the relationship between their two houses. Recently, Simone had heard that his useless son was playing a leadership game with other noble children to seek his acknowledgement. It was a cheap trick, but it wouldn't hurt to play along a little. He's an innocent child. Receiving an answer from his father for the first time, the boy was overjoyed and asked more questions, but was met with Simone's cold indifference. Lady Simone took his hand to comfort him, saying she hoped he and Jamie would become friends to maintain their long-standing alliance. "Of course, mother. Don't worry," he said with a fake smile to deceive her, but in his eyes, Jamie was just a lowly peasant noble. He would make Jamie kneel at his feet, and then he would finally be acknowledged by his cold father. That naive expression caught the eye of his younger brother, who gave a mysterious smile. Back to the country boy Jamie, his mother told him to go around and make friends. But that wasn't going to happen. Jamie had already planned to enjoy his private time. So Jamie wandered around looking for a quiet place. He stopped at Count Simone's very relaxing garden. The peaceful and gentle scenery made Jamie sigh in admiration. Despite his cold appearance, Count Simone had used magic to create such a fairy tale-like garden. He was looking forward to talking with him. "Who are you talking to?" A voice suddenly spoke from behind, making Jamie wary. He immediately created a sword and pointed it at the person, a naive little girl who looked terrified at the tip of his sword. Jamie clicked his tongue and retracted his weapon. Why are you being so rude?" The terrified girl burst into tears and yelled. But that's the price for suddenly appearing behind him. She should feel lucky her head is still attached. "So who are you? Why were you behind me?" Jamie asked patiently. The little girl became confident when she saw Jamie's curiosity, but she was being coy and didn't answer right away. Her annoying attitude irritated Jamie. Moreover, he hadn't even sensed her presence earlier. "I'm not in the mood for games." As he finished speaking, Jamie fired a magical air bullet at her feet. Jamie warned her not to mess with him, because he had a gun, a magic gun that could pierce her annoying face. He really meant it. The girl was stunned by Jamie's blunt attitude, especially his murderous expression, which scared her to death. Finally, the girl revealed her identity. Ash Valor, the eldest daughter of Viscount Valor, and a spirit user. Spirit user is a term for a magician who can communicate with the mystical forces born in nature, called spirits. Spirit users are extremely rare. Their very existence is an outstanding talent, and they are even granted the title of Baron. Now Jamie understood how Ash could approach him silently thanks to the wind spirit, but what surprised him was that Ash looked to be about his age. Usually, spirit users begin their training to harmonize with nature around the age of 10. It seems Ash is a genius with an innate ability to harmonize. With formal training, she might even be able to communicate with the Spirit King. Annoyed, Ash Valor asked for Jamie's identity in return. He was sure she was a competitive kid. Jamie replied with his handsome, charming face, "My name is Jamie Weltone, the heir of the Weltone County family." Ash Valor dazedly remembered something about the Viscount Valor family that everyone knew. They were loyal subordinates of Count Weltone. At this time, Count Weltone was wiping out Levant. He had let this gang operate in the shadows. But this time, they had gone too far. Human trafficking was the phrase he hated most. Only madmen or those with a death wish would dare do that in his territory. The leader cried and begged for his life, but all he received was Agino's order to hang him the next day. After dealing with the Levant gang, Agino ordered a servant to prepare the carriage to depart for his wife and children. As the remnants of Levant were being escorted away, a mysterious figure in a black cloak hidden in the treetops witnessed everything. He irritably spoke into a communication orb, "Prepare Plan B." Back to Jamie, who was being tailed by a yellow cotton ball. Unable to stand it anymore, he shouted in annoyance, "Why do you keep following me?" Even if Viscount Valor was his father's vassal, that had nothing to do with them. Besides, he hated her crybaby act. Jamie tried to leave, but was grabbed tightly by a hand. "Damn it! Why was she following him so blatantly? This is the first time I've met someone my age, so I want to be friends with you, Ash said, mustering all her courage. What the hell? Jamie was dumbfounded. He never thought that would be the reason had grown a tail. If Ash had said she needed a servant, he could understand. But friends? That must be important to a child, not to a soul that's thousands of years old like him. Besides, that's not his responsibility. Find someone else. I don't need friends. Wait, Jamie. You meanie. Ash yelled in frustration. Jamie didn't want to make friends. Close relationships would make him lose his reason. If only he had discarded those redundant feelings from the start, he wouldn't have had to taste that bitter spice in his past life. Jamie was annoyed remembering the unpleasant memory. He didn't want to be so weak. It was all that blonde kid Ash's fault. Jamie Welltone, a redhead, called his name. The characteristic hair color made Jamie realize he was Count Simone's son. What do you want? He replied. The two punks following the redhead started talking. How dare you disrespect our boss, Alf, you short country bumpkin. Hearing his two newly hired lackeys praise him as the heir to the Simone family, he nodded in satisfaction. Kids these days talk so much, Jamie smirked. Shut up. The two were immediately unable to speak. They stammered and sputtered but couldn't get a word out. Alf pointed at Jamie and demanded, Did you just cast a silence spell on them? Jamie laughed. It seemed this guy was smarter than his two lackeys. You arrogant brat. I'm older than you, Alf said angrily. Nature would surely be shocked to learn Jamie's soul was thousands of years old. Jamie didn't want to waste words and told him to get straight to the point. Alfred's tone and attitude did a 180 when he saw Jamie use the silence spell. Instead of bullying him, he now acted like a long-lost brother. Brother, my ass. Jamie was annoyed by his meaningless words and directly told Alf to get lost. Alfred flared up. Damn it, do you know who I am? The son of Count Simone. Jamie replied coldly. Alfred felt head saved some face and used the excuse of their family's relationship to try and have a pleasant chat with Jamie, quickly making excuses for his previous tactless behavior. Jamie knew these punks' tricks all too well. They surely planned to gang up on him if he hadn't shown his magic. Alfred used the excuse that since they were both heirs, it would be better to get acquainted early. After beating around the bush, it was clear he wanted Jamie to be his subordinate. Of course, Jamie flatly refused. This little brat wasn't even worthy of being his underling, let alone his brother. This son of a bitch is getting on my nerves. Alf, enraged by the embarrassment, summoned his favorite treasure with a triumphant look. I will crush your half-assed magic and make you serve me. Jamie smirked. He's finally showing his true colors. Alf admitted he intended to use force from the beginning, but changed his plan slightly when he saw Jamie knew magic. Alf's two-faced, annoying attitude disgusted Jamie, especially since he was just a kid. Surely Count Simone and the Welltone family wouldn't let Alf bully him, but everything was already in Alf's hands. He pulled out an orb, and the magic from it created a barrier around them. An illusion magic artifact that intrigued Jamie. Alf dispelled the silence spell on his two stupid lackeys. Once unmuzzled, they immediately started a verbal fight with Jamie, as that was their only weapon. But Jamie's attention was only on the illusion barrier. This toy is quite interesting. Interesting, huh? I guess you haven't realized your situation yet, Alf sneered. A second later, dark magic enveloped all three of them. Blood started pouring from their noses and eyes. Jamie laughed slyly. Don't deactivate the artifact. Otherwise, everyone will see you struggling in extreme agony. After dealing with the brats, Jamie left. Alf writhed in pain. He couldn't understand how Jamie could be a fourth-class mage while he was only second class. The Welltone family was supposed to specialize in swordsmanship. He hated the word talent the most, something he didn't have. He couldn't accept this. An evil thought began to form in Alf's mind. At all costs, he would crush that talent. He would make it so Jamie Welltone could never use magic again. Alf led his two lackeys, sneaking through the mansion to find a magic tool. The two lackeys hesitated, not daring to go through with it. If they were caught, they'd all be in deep trouble. So what? It's now or never, follow me, Alf said angrily, not understanding how he ended up with two cowardly lackeys like them. Big brother, a chillingly sweet voice, startled Alf. His younger brother Renan peeked out, smiling and waving. Alf wondered why his cunning younger brother was here just as he was about to execute his dark plan. His younger brother Renan smirked. Big brother, you've made me sad. How could I sit still after seeing my brother get hurt? As he spoke, he handed Alf a magic tool their father had created. Needless to say, Alf was amazed that Renan had so easily swiped the magic tool. Renan continued to manipulate his blockhead brother, urging him to go teach Jamie a lesson. Alf's reason was completely clouded. It didn't matter where Renan got the magic tool from. What mattered now was regaining his honor from Jamie. That night, Agino Welltone arrived at the Simone mansion for a party. Count Simone was already waiting, raising a hand to welcome Agino. Agino also replied warmly, wondering if the sun had risen in the west for this stubborn redhead to personally welcome him. Count Simone led Agino into his office to talk. The topic, once again, was Jamie. Simone could tell Agino was a doting father. Moreover, the two Welltone children were so polite, it made Simone envious. Agino also knew a little about Simone's two little devils. They gave him a headache whenever he thought of them. Simone changed the subject back to Jamie's talent. Agino was no stranger to Simone's roundabout way of talking. Agino got straight to the point. It seemed his prized son had caught someone else's eye again. Simone asserted that Jamie wasn't just talented, he was born to rule the world. Simone had never met anyone as gifted as him. Agino thanked him for the compliment. Simone was saying the exact same thing as that old Marquis Linmi. Agino had known of Jamie's talent since he was born, but he never thought his son was this incredible. He believed that someone with a talent for magic should become a magician, even though Agino had once dreamed Jamie would follow in his footsteps as a sword master. And yet, Marquis Linmi had refused to be Jamie's teacher. Simone also understood why. Jamie was so talented that no one could be his teacher. He just needed to achieve enlightenment on his own and ascend to a 9th-class magician. To be honest, Simone was a little jealous that Jamie's talent was greater than his, but he was also curious to see how far the power of a supreme magician could reach. Agino was stunned by Simone's declaration, but Simone had his reasons. Humans are too weak. They might think they've built a great civilization, but that's only from a human perspective. Compared to dragons or high elves, human magic is nothing. It's only thanks to talented sword masters like Agino that they can maintain peace. But if a legendary 9th-class magician existed, even dragons wouldn't dare make a peep in front of Jamie. Simone's ambition was clear on his face. Simone had always yearned for humanity to rule the world, contrary to Agino, who thought it was arrogance. Simone didn't care if it was arrogant or not. He reminded Agino of the forgotten part of history, a secret only a few on the continent knew. When history suddenly vanished 10,000 years ago, the transcendent beings looked down on and refused to share their secrets with humanity, which is why Count Simone always wanted the power to escape their control. To prevent the disappearance of human civilization and avoid history repeating itself for unknown reasons. After returning from Simone's office, Agino went to visit the sleeping Jamie. He was truly worried about being the father of such a prodigiously gifted child. In Agino's eyes, Jamie was just his adorable little son. He resolved to try and let Jamie grow up like a normal child, because the path of a genius is never smooth. The next morning was another grand banquet. Jamie sat in a corner, pondering what on earth his father was thinking about last night to look so troubled. "Hello, Jamie." Ash popped her head out to greet him, which annoyed Jamie. He bluntly said he didn't want to get involved with her. "But I do," Ash said shamelessly, then turned away and loudly called for her older sister. Jamie was annoyed. One was already a nuisance, and now she was calling for backup. He had to leave before he had more tales following him. Ash loudly told Jamie not to leave, saying they at least had to introduce themselves, given the relationship between their two families. "Ash, that's rude." A gentle voice rang out. Rebecca Valor, the eldest daughter of Viscount Valor, was stopping her tactless younger sister. Jamie suddenly froze. He muttered the name Jane, the person he loved most in his life, who had been sacrificed to the gods. The reason why Diablo Von Fear became a demon. But what mattered was that Jane was now standing before him in a small body. While he was lost in a moment of silent contemplation like a simp, Alf appeared. "There you are." Jamie looked at Rebecca, his heart a tangled mess. The little girl also looked at him in confusion. Only Alf stood between them, curious. "Jamie, did you really fall for my sister?" At this touching moment, that guy Alf interrupted. He used a magic tool to launch a fire spell at Jamie and Ash. Rebecca didn't hesitate to rush toward her sister. "Don't interfere," Jamie said coldly, then dispelled Alf's magic, much to his astonishment. The kid couldn't believe Jamie could dispel the 6th-class Phoenix soul created by his father. But it was too late to run now. Jamie was furious. The only thought in his mind was to strangle that red-headed brat. Ice magic froze over Alf's body, making him freeze up. When he regained consciousness, he felt pain spreading through every cell and screamed. Jamie's eyes were filled with painful hatred. In that moment, a large hand embraced him, and a familiar voice spoke. Jamie came to his senses and realized his father had arrived at some point. Agino soothed him. "It's me, your father. It's all right now, my love." Seeing that Rebecca and Ash were still unharmed, Jamie's gaze softened, and he gradually passed out in his father's arms. Count Welltone looked at his well-behaved son in his arms, unable to believe he had just harbored true killing intent. At first, the two thought it was a mistake, but it couldn't be that much of a mistake. That brat Alf could have really been logged out right then. Simone, on the other hand, wasn't worried about his son at all. In his eyes, there was only Jamie's talent. It was very likely he would achieve the dream Simone could never reach. "Honey, that child hurt our son. Are you going to let this go?" Lady Simone cried out, hugging Alf. Jamie's mother couldn't let her falsely accuse her son. Everyone knew her bratty son started it on purpose, the proof being the artifact that little devil was holding. Lady Simone still tried her best to clear Alf's name, which angered Jamie's mother. Luckily, Agino stopped her in time, or she would have grabbed that woman by the hair. Lady Simone was desperate. She needed someone to help her son. That's when she looked up at Simone. In her mind, although he had a cold exterior, he surely couldn't value others more than his own flesh and blood. "It seems my son has gravely offended you all on such an auspicious day. I am truly sorry, Lady Welltone." Simone immediately spoke, shattering all of his wife's thoughts. Although Jamie's mother let it go on the surface, she was still furious inside. The family decided to leave to take care of Jamie. After Simone announced the end of the party, the guests left, leaving only the couple. Lady Simone screamed resentfully, "Alf is our son. That well-toned brat, he—" "Shut up," Simone said, looking at her coldly, which silenced her. Family matters should be resolved within the family. That night, Simone directly questioned Alf. He knew the boy wanted his attention, but his foolish actions greatly affected the relationships between nobles. Alf trembled as he knelt on the ground. He feared his father more than a demon, but he also wanted his acknowledgement. "Who gave you the Phoenix soul?" Simone growled. Alf hesitated, but seeing the expression that looked ready to tear his mouth open made him confess about Renan. A moment later, Renan appeared at the door, annoyed with his useless older brother. But for now, he had to act innocent to get by. Renan frankly admitted to giving the Phoenix soul to Alf, reasoning that he didn't want to see his brother lose to a little kid. "Lies. You just wanted to manipulate your brother," Simone said coldly. "This kid must have forgotten who gave birth to him, trying to be smarter than his old man." Alf couldn't believe he was being spun around like a top by his younger brother. Simone then gave them the answer they had always been waiting for. He knew his sons always wanted his attention, but he couldn't bring himself to pay attention because, despite sharing his blood, they were like idiots. However, that didn't mean he didn't know what was going on in their tiny brains. "If you want my attention, then do things worthy of being my sons, instead of running around playing these childish games." Finally, before leaving, Simone ordered the two of them to go apologize to Jamie at sunrise and not stop until he forgave them. Of course, Alf didn't like the idea of meeting Jamie one bit, because now he feared him even more than his own father. As for Renan, he had been standing there frozen. Alf thought his innocent little brother was in shock because his father had exposed his true colors. However, what was actually in Renan's head was Simone's demand to prove their abilities. He was so excited he couldn't contain his sinister smile. Meanwhile, Jamie's mother was still keeping watch by his bedside. She could sense Jamie's bloodlust towards Alf. But how could her 9-year-old son, who listened to her fairy tales every day, have such thoughts? At first, she thought it was just children playing, but thinking back now, if that artifact had activated properly, Jamie would have been burned to a crisp. At this thought, Lady Welltone angrily clenched her fists. Even if Simone came to apologize himself, she could not forgive his son. Just then, Jamie stirred, pulling her out of her vengeful thoughts. She shouldn't make things more complicated. Are you all right? Agino placed a hand on his wife's shoulder to comfort her. Right now, he would do whatever his wife said. Jamie's mother had calmed down. After all, they needed to consider the power of the northern nobles. That old man Simone had also apologized in person. Besides, that brat Alf has already been scolded until he cried his eyes out. Thinking of this, the couple laughed. Considering the matter settled, they left to let Jamie rest. After the room became quiet again, the little cotton ball Jamie emerged from under the blankets. He understood his parents were extremely worried. At that moment, Jamie had truly lost control. But above all was Jane, his lover of 100 years. He never expected her to be reincarnated. It wasn't that strange, but did she have to be reincarnated at the same time as him? But it seems Jane doesn't have memories of her past life like he does. Is this a joke of fate, or a scheme by those 12 bastards? Black immediately appeared, dispelling Jamie's thought. If those bastards knew he was reincarnated, they wouldn't have left him alone. What the hell am I thinking? Jamie reassured himself, but the image of Jane's death was still as vivid as yesterday. He decided to go meet Rebecca, Jane's current incarnation. In some corner, this suspicious man in a black coat was tying a message to a carrier pigeon. The letter's content was about Jamie Welton's magical talent. This news would surely cause a great change in the magical world. The next day, Jamie was strolling in the garden of the Simone estate. He enjoyed the fresh air. Little Black also came out to chill with Jamie, making him laugh sarcastically at it. Perhaps because it was the last day, most of the guests had already left. That's how Jamie was able to find such a beautiful and quiet place. On his way, Jamie kept thinking of how to meet Rebecca. Suddenly, a pattering sound hit Jamie's ears, but the sky was clear without a single drop of rain. He looked around cautiously but couldn't find anything. Jamie focused and expanded his mana to scan a wide area. Following the path of mana, Jamie finally found the source of the sound, a girl sitting by a lake, talking to Undine, a water spirit. Undine sensed someone approaching and left. Rebecca also turned around. Seeing Jamie, she quickly stood up and respectfully called him young Lord Welton, because her father, the Viscount, was a subordinate of Jamie's father, Agino. Standing before his crush, Jamie stammered, what's your name? Rebecca laughed. She calmly introduced her full name. Rebecca was a water magic user. Jamie fell into deep thought again. Why were they both water magic users? Jane's words echoed in his mind. Don't forget me. Seeing Jamie staring blankly into the distance, Rebecca called out to bring him back to reality. Why do you look so sad, my lord? Jamie, or rather Diablo, was still immersed in his painful feelings. Rebecca was worried. She guessed that he was still in shock from yesterday's incident. Everything will be all right. Rebecca hugged Jamie tightly to comfort him. Jamie knew full well this feeling was just a remnant from his past life, but he still wanted to enjoy it for a little while longer. Afterward, the two sat down by the lake and talked. Rebecca cheerfully shared what her father had told her. Hard times pass quickly when you share the burden with others. It seemed Rebecca was very proud of her father, Viscount Valor. Rebecca took the initiative to express her regret for not being able to talk with Jamie yesterday. Coincidentally, Jamie felt the same way. Looking at the energetic girl before him, Jamie came to realize that his lover from his past life had truly been reincarnated. Now, she was a different person. He had to accept this painful truth. Jamie casually asked about forming a pact with the spirits of the Valor family. It was a long-standing tradition, but Rebecca had difficulty with it. She was naturally attractive to spirits, but they all refused to form a pact with her after meeting. Until one day, that water spirit Undine came and formed a pact with Rebecca. Perhaps it was fate. Rebecca still regretted forming the pact herself without telling her father. After hearing this, Jamie remembered the Spirit King's pact. It was a soul contract established with each other's lives. The moment Jane's soul was reincarnated as Rebecca, the Spirit King must have noticed and sought her out. Rebecca noticed Viscount Valor's disappointment, yet he still supported his daughter. That's something special, Jamie said. He had never seen a spirit actively approach someone and ask to form a contract. Even though it wasn't the wind spirit, Rebecca was chosen by the water spirit, and that was her true strength. The words no one had ever said to Rebecca moved her. All her torment seemed to disappear. Rebecca smiled contentedly, thanking Jamie for showing her the way. It was time to leave, so Jamie took the initiative to depart, leaving Rebecca behind, regretting that she wanted to talk more with him. But Rebecca immediately blushed and denied it. Oh, so two people have fallen for the bitch called love. On the way back, Jamie asked Black about his performance. There's no way any 9-year-old kid talks as maturely as he does, but Jamie also thought Rebecca was quite mature. With a refreshed mood, Jamie returned to the mansion. The sound of his name being called made him turn around. It was the two red-haired brothers from the Simone family. Alf scratched his head, then mustered up all his courage and shouted, "I'm sorry." Jamie was completely shocked, wondering what possessed this kid to proactively apologize. Then he suddenly understood. He must have been whipped with a cane by his father last night, which is why he's desperately begging for my forgiveness. Being exposed made Alf blush, unable to hide his embarrassment. Jamie didn't bother paying him any mind. He glanced at the young man with one eye covered next to him, and Alf immediately introduced his younger brother. "Why did you bring him along? Too scared to come and apologize by yourself?" Jamie taunted. Renan then confessed that he was the one who gave the artifact to Alf. "Ah, so this little bastard was behind it too." Jamie gritted his teeth, realizing both Simone brothers wanted to trick him. Renan put on an innocent, saintly face and introduced himself. Jamie immediately sized him up. It seems the younger brother has more potential than the older one. You can tell from his face that he's a cunning old fox. Even so, Renan couldn't meet that old man Simone's expectations. Jamie wondered just how great his ambitions were. Renan continued with his smooth talk. "Luckily, nothing bad happened. You've heard the apology, so can we go now?" "Not a chance." Jamie smirked sinisterly. Compared to a soul that was thousands of years old like his, that little puppy was still green and naive. During yesterday's chaos, Renan never showed up. He probably thought that besides his father, no one was better than him. If Jamie just let Renan's twisted mentality be, there would be trouble later. Better to fix it now. Jamie pointed at the two kids mockingly. "Since the Simone family has two sons, you two will have to fight for the inheritance. I'm sure the two brothers have a bond as strong as glue." Jamie stepped forward and whispered into Renan's ear, "If you dare to do it, you dare to face the consequences. If Father Simone can't teach you, then let me." While Renan was still confused, darkness suddenly enveloped him. He felt his body gradually grow cold as if it were being frozen. Renan collapsed to his knees before the eyes that seemed to want to swallow him whole. "This is your last chance." Jamie only scared Renan with a small illusion before releasing him. Tears and saliva covered Renan's face, which was drained of all color. Whether it was an illusion or not, Renan was still trembling. He held his head and screamed. Suddenly, he remembered something. Someone had said this was his last chance. Renan looked up and met Jamie's smile. Sorry." Renan kept mumbling as if he were possessed. The only thought in his head right now was to kneel before Jamie. That afternoon, the Welltone family left. Jamie had been waiting for this for a long time. He felt it was better to just stay quietly at home being hugged and kissed by his mother. "Ah, hell no. I almost lost the honor of a great dark magician of thousands of years. It seems you're in a very good mood." Count Simone finally had a chance to speak with Jamie, his eyes unable to hide his astonishment upon seeing him again. Jamie switched to his nice guy mode and replied, "I'm just happy to be going back to my nest. This place is full of brats who love to cause trouble." The two had planned to have a conversation, but things didn't go as they thought. Simone wondered why Jamie wasn't staying longer, but Jamie declined. Stay longer so his two sons could play more dirty tricks, or what? Simone gave a wry smile. He couldn't understand how his genes produced two sons who loved to stir up trouble. However, he warned Jamie, "The magic world has started to take notice of you." Of course, Jamie had already figured that out. The two strolled along, and Jamie asked about the unfortunate Renan, whom he had scared pale. Simone had also guessed it was Jamie's doing. Since yesterday, Renan had been dazed as if he had lost his soul. Jamie was surprised. He knew Jamie had punished his son, yet he wasn't angry at all. Simone answered as if it were obvious. "If you do wrong, you get punished. There's nothing to argue about." No wonder. Now Jamie understood why those two redheads were so spoiled. He saw that Renan had quite a talent for magic, yet Simone ignored him. It turned out it was because he couldn't see anything good in his second son, not even his cunning personality. Jamie didn't know what to say in this situation. It wouldn't hurt to try. So why was old man Simone so lazy? Renan was surely unable to reveal his talent because he was being suppressed by others. And the first person at fault is this heartless father. Simone was bewildered at being blamed. It was his neglect that made his two sons run around all day trying to get his attention. Alf might be like that, but Renan has immense potential. Simone was surprised. Could his judgment of his own son be wrong? A level 8 mage didn't even have as keen an eye as this 9-year-old child. Simone felt as if a great magician was standing before him, giving him pointers. Jamie continued, "Perhaps your son's help could help you overcome your limits." Simone was astonished that Jamie could see through his ambitions. Just then, his dear mother called for Jamie to get going. He happily left. After speaking like a wise old man, Jamie ended with, "Just let my words go in one ear and out the other." After all, they're just the words of a child. Such a provoker. Simone turned back inside. It was a real shame that Jamie wasn't his son. On a clear, breezy moonlit night, Jamie snuck out again to hang out with Black. He was annoyed, calling out his two underlings who were always late, making him wait. Philip immediately apologized. It was all because Jean was preening himself to meet his master after a long absence, which is why they were late. Jamie sighed, speechless with these two. He couldn't tell if they were human or zombies anymore. Now for the main business. Philip had been monitoring for 2 months. The Church of Janus was always doing good deeds around HYSH without asking for anything in return. They provided food and shelter for the homeless, thereby gaining a good reputation and successfully opening an orphanage. According to the investigation, the Janus people started their activities after Count Welltone destroyed Levant, which was about 2 months ago. They visited and helped the poor, then preached the holy word of God to them. At first, the people didn't pay much attention, but through their persistence, they won the hearts of the people in the domain. They quickly became devout followers. Day by day, the status of the Church of Janus in HYSH grew astonishingly. Currently, the Church of Janus is revered as the most virtuous and respectable church in HYSH. Jamie couldn't believe they had successfully manipulated the people's minds. The Janus followers never act for the benefit of others. Do you believe that peace and war can coexist? Jamie's sudden question left the two zombies stunned, but Philip believed they were related. That is the nature of Janus. Peace reigns on a mountain of blood and corpses. War is when his divinity shines. Therefore, what the priests of Janus are doing goes against his wretched life motto. Jamie was certain that the priests' good deeds were hiding another dark plan. He ordered Philip and Jean to continue their surveillance and uncover the hidden agenda. At the Church of Janus's orphanage, the boy Ricky was happily sweeping the courtyard, endlessly grateful to the priest he called father. The reason was simple. The church gave him food and shelter. This was paradise for a tormented beggar kid like Ricky. Ricky, an orphan, arrived at the Janus orphanage a month and a half ago with his sister, Anna, a blind girl. Their parents, knowing this, abandoned the two siblings and fled. To protect Anna, Ricky did all sorts of bad things, but life on the streets was still harsh, and adults were just as cold. Just as they were on the brink of death, a hand reached out and saved the two forsaken lives. In Ricky's eyes, it was the hand of a god. They gave the two siblings a new life. Since then, Ricky has had a dream, to become a priest to spread this miracle to everyone. Ricky took his sister out to play. People happily came to share news about Sinno, who was favored by the gods, and was preparing to enter the main church to become a priest. Ricky was astonished. That had been his dream for over a month. That night, Jamie was also on patrol with wings borrowed from Black. Before landing, Jamie's eyes fell upon a young man lying on the ground. Jamie landed to investigate. This guy's energy was strange. It was disgusting and made him sick because he had holy energy, but he didn't look much like a priest. It seems he's a church knight, but how the hell is a knight sleeping in the middle of the road like this? In any case, he didn't like these holy types. Jamie wondered if he should just finish him off tonight. Suddenly, the man grabbed his leg, making Jamie's heart skip a beat. What the heck? My name is Holy Knight, he mumbled. Jamie was skeptical. My what? I'm hungry, he breathed out and collapsed. Damn it, I'm speechless. Jamie didn't need to act. This guy would die of starvation soon enough. He was a bit pissed for being scared like that. Jamie left without a second glance. But what the hell? That guy appeared at his dining table with that smug attitude. Everyone at the dining table was cheerful except for Jamie. If he had known, he would have slit his throat last night. It turned out the patrolling soldiers had carried his starving body back to the mansion. After eating, the knight recovered his strength, his mouth working nonstop like a machine gun. Jamie was visibly annoyed. Why did his parents have to treat this lame knight so well? Agino inquired and learned that he was from the Church of Fear, which worships the goddess of mercy and punishment. The Count and his wife were surprised to meet someone from the Church of Fear here. She asked the knight if he knew Archbishop Sephira. Hearing that name, he guessed Jamie's mother was from Afton, but when he heard she was from the Vale family, the knight stood up. Everyone was curious about his action. Immediately, he knelt respectfully before Jamie's mother. It is an honor for me to meet such a distinguished person. Jamie was speechless. He knew the Church of Fear operated in the Vale territory in Afton, but a church knight kneeling was reserved only for archbishops or those of higher rank. What on earth is going on? So Jamie used all his cute powers to beg Agino to explain it to him. In his mind, Jamie was screaming. He couldn't believe that a thousands of years old man like him would one day have to play the role of this innocent 9-year-old kid. However, his father didn't explain right away. Jamie felt like had been struck by lightning. Had gone to such lengths, and it had no effect. How embarrassing. However, there was one thing Jamie knew for sure. If the Vale family was closely related to the Church of Fear, then the person he had to destroy was his own mother. After the meal, Agino summoned the knight to question him. The Church of Fear had no business in this eastern region. Could it be they wanted to expand their influence? The knight quickly waved his hand in denial, saying he was pursuing those who conducted horrific experiments to create chimeras. This news made Agino's killing intent flare. First human trafficking, and now chimeras. Who on earth was running rampant in his territory like this? The knight bit his lip, hesitating. Because this was a church secret, he couldn't reveal it carelessly, but if Agino helped, he would tell him a bit. It turned out the knight had come to the Welltone house to rely on the overwhelming power of Swordmaster Agino. He pondered deeply. This is no small matter. A chimera, on the surface, is an artificial creature created by combining the powers of multiple living beings. But most chimera creators are considered criminals because their key ingredient is the human body. Only a few of them don't use humans, but so far there have been no exceptions. Anyone who creates a chimera must be put in chains. However, due to Agino's status, he couldn't guarantee that he could fully support the knight, but because of the relationship between his wife's family and the Church of Fear, Agino couldn't ignore it. He decided to help him. The knight jumped with joy, thanking Agino. He then got straight to the point, asking for details. Why didn't the Church of Fear ask the kingdom for help? The knight hesitated again. The Church of Fear didn't ask the kingdom because their reputation would be tarnished. Furthermore, the person the church was pursuing had sacrificed 10 priests, meaning he was using holy power to create chimeras. Elsewhere, Jamie was nervously walking into the garden. He couldn't believe the day would come when he'd actually look forward to this annoying tea time. Sarah cheered happily when she saw Jamie arrive. He was usually quite late, but today was different, making his mother curious about what had made her all-knowing son so impatient. Jamie didn't hesitate to ask why that knight was kneeling before his mother, and with such an admiring look, as if meeting an idol. Jamie's mother laughed. She guessed he would be curious about the relationship between the Vale family and the Church of Fear. She slowly explained, "Your maternal great-grandfather, meaning my grandfather, was the savior of the Church of Fear." Jamie was thunderstruck. This news was even more shocking than finding out his crush had been reincarnated. A long time ago, an extremely valuable item from the Church of Fear was stolen. That was when your great-grandfather and your mother stepped in to help. That was the Portsmouth Garden incident. The Demon King's followers tried to incarnate him by using the holy relic of the Church of Fear, but they failed. While lending aid, my grandfather, Mart, passed away. The Church of Fear appointed him an honorary archbishop and pledged to treat the Vale family as equals to a bishop for the next 100 years. Jamie noticed the sadness on her face. His mother must have been very close to her grandfather. Moreover, for Fear's followers to recognize the Vale family as bishops was an absurd compensation, but it was likely because the stolen item was their only holy relic. Then one day, he would destroy fear. But first, he would squeeze them for all they're worth. Just thinking about this wicked plan made him feel ecstatic. Jamie, oh, Jamie, his mother's voice snapped Jamie out of his thoughts. He returned to his obedient son mode and continued with the tea-drinking session. That night, a full week had passed. It was time for little Sinno to be assigned to the main church, and a grand farewell party was held. Ricky watched Sinno from a distance with sparkling eyes, not forgetting to say goodbye to his friend before they parted. It seemed the two were quite close. Sinno said he would wait for him at the main church, so they could become excellent priests together. Watching the carriage depart, Ricky resolved that one day, he too would become a priest like Sinno. Less than half an hour later, they arrived. Sinno was quite surprised by the main church they mentioned. It didn't look like a church at all, so Sinno hesitantly asked the priest accompanying him. "You're not mistaken. Follow me," he said, leading the boy inside and ordering Sinno to go down into a basement. The long staircase led down into an endless, dark space, sending chills down Sinno's spine. On the way, he passed a room with a bizarre creature that startled Sinno. He kept telling the priest about it, but the man ignored him and led him before the bishop. The treacherous face from the first few chapters emerged from the shadows. Sinno cried, "Wasn't I chosen by God? Besides, there's definitely a monster here. I want to go home." "Sinno, you are the chosen one," the bishop said with a disingenuous smile. Sinno screamed, "Why was I brought to this godforsaken place instead of the main church?" "Because this is where we have achieved the unimaginable," the bishop said with a sinister face. "I want to see what a pure, innocent child like you will become." He summoned someone. A deformed man entered, his arm grabbing the trembling Sinno. "You will become a beautiful chimera." The next morning in the peaceful territory of Hace, Jamie was guiding the knight around Bell Street, the largest road in the domain. The knight chuckled, remembering this was the street where he had once collapsed from hunger. Jamie didn't like him one bit, but the reason he had to guide him was very simple. Back to his chill tea time this morning, his respectable father, Agino, had given him the task of being a guide for that bull-headed knight. From that moment on, Jamie knew his day would be incredibly troublesome. While Jamie was annoyed, the knight was silently marveling at his memory, which was better than a tour guide's. "Jamie," the knight called out with a radiant face, grateful that Jamie had agreed to show him around Hace. The knight extended his hand, wanting to walk with him like close brothers, but Jamie wasn't having it. "Put your hand down, dude." "Hey." The knight retracted his hand in disappointment, waiting for Jamie's question. He was curious about what he and his father had talked about last night. Damn, the knight didn't expect him to ask that. Usually, kids would ask him what knights do. The knight immediately tried to change the subject by complimenting Jamie's good looks. Jamie scowled. That's obvious, no need to discuss it. He knew full well the man was lying. The knight gave a foolish laugh. Are all children this mature? But he still insisted that they had only talked about Jamie last night. Failing to get what he wanted, Jamie walked away in frustration. If you don't want to say it, just say so. Only a child would believe such words. The knight knew had been seen through and stopped lying, but he couldn't tell a 9-year-old about chimeras. Jamie's gaze was sharp. He guessed that something was hiding in Hace, which was why the knight wanted to look around. But what on earth could it be? Jamie wished Conan was here to help him, while the knight, seeing Jamie ignore him, thought Jamie was sulking. Suddenly, Jamie remembered there was one more place they hadn't been to, the Church of Janus, a place he had wanted to visit for a long time. On the way, the knight was still worried that Jamie was sulking, which irritated him. Ricky was diligently sweeping the yard. When he looked up, his eyes met Jamie's, who was gloomily walking with a clueless blonde guy. Ricky realized Jamie was the black-haired person who had bumped into him that night. The holy knight immediately asked, "Is that your friend?" Jamie remembered. "Don't tell me that's the kid who bumped into me that night." Then changing his hair color was meaningless. Jamie decisively walked away. After all, he didn't even know Ricky. Of course, Ricky wouldn't let him go. He dashed towards Jamie. "Did you dye your hair? I almost didn't recognize you, hee." Ricky just crossed the road without noticing a carriage rushing by. The coachman shouted, "Get out of the way." Right in front of Ricky, 2 large carriage horses were about to stomp down. Truck coexists in every era. Knight Brad used all his strength to reach for Ricky, while the boy stood frozen with tears streaming down his face, murmuring, Am I going to die? TSK, Jamie was annoyed. He wanted to play the villain, but ended up having to save someone. He used binding chains to summon a series of chains that shot towards Ricky. Knight Brad managed to pull Ricky away from the horse's hooves just in time. When he looked back, he couldn't hide his surprise. The chains summoned by Jamie's magic had blocked the carriage's path just in time for Brad to save Ricky in a split second. After that shock, Ricky still hadn't recovered. Seems like he was very lucky. He rushed over and hugged Jamie tightly, moved. Thank you so much, boo-hoo. Only family gets to hug me, Jamie said, annoyed as he pushed Ricky away. Only Brad stood quietly, deep in thought. He was recalling the moment Jamie used magic. It was on a completely different level from the mages he had worked with before. He never expected a bratty 9-year-old to possess such terrifying power. Perhaps in just a few more years, Jamie would become an existence that even he couldn't look at as an equal like he did now. Seeing Brad just standing there, Jamie called out to him to go inside. Brad was still dazed. Huh? Go inside where? What do you mean where? The Church of Janus, you old man. Jamie sighed wearily, making Brad feel like he was being looked down on. Ricky volunteered to guide them. Along the way, the boy cheerfully talked about the orphanage, his new home. A nun appeared and called out to Ricky. She was curious about the presence of Jamie and Brad. Ricky immediately introduced the two saviors of his life. The nun looked worried when she heard Ricky almost died by carriage. The nun bowed her head to thank them, but when she heard Rush say he was from the Church of Fear, her expression immediately changed. Rush didn't forget to boast about Jamie's talent. It was all thanks to him using magic. Otherwise, 2 lives would have been lost, not just one. The nun asked about his identity. Jamie didn't hesitate to introduce himself as a Welltone. In short, his father was the boss here. The nun immediately apologized for not recognizing the characteristic blue hair of the Welltone family. This reaction made Jamie suspicious. Anyone born in haste would know the distinguishing feature of the Lord. She then asked if Rush had come to take Ricky to Fear. He quickly waved his hand in denial, using the excuse of a tour to enter the Church of Janus. So, the nun told Ricky to take Jamie for a walk, while Knight Rush would go with her. Jamie was annoyed when he realized the old nun's intention to separate him and Rush. She might want to eliminate him right away. In any case, he had to be cautious. Jamie put on a friendly face, said goodbye to Rush, and didn't forget to tell him to come home for dinner with his parents. Rush understood the hidden meaning in Jamie's words and waved goodbye, signaling that he understood. Now that Ricky knew Jamie was the Lord's son, he became timid and didn't dare to speak comfortably anymore. Jamie shot him a look and told him to talk like before. He didn't care about status or anything like that. Ricky immediately brightened up, almost hugging Jamie. He excitedly ran ahead to lead the way. Jamie couldn't understand which nerve in this kid's brain was broken to make him so hyperactive. After a tour of the orphanage, Ricky led Jamie to the room he shared with his sister. Of course, Jamie had no interest in their room. Ricky threw the door open to introduce his new friend to Anna. The girls slowly stood up to greet them. The moment Jamie saw Anna, he froze. The girl before him was born with the qualities of a saintess, especially those eyes filled with holy power. Saintesses are messengers sent from heaven, who can use the power of the god they worship more easily than anyone else. They are granted powerful holy power in one part of their body. Currently, that little girl Anna is blind due to the powerful holy power in her eyes. But once she grows up and awakens her power, Anna will be able to see the flow of the world through those divine eyes. There's a high chance that in the future, Anna will be a troublesome enemy for Jamie. However, Jamie can't just eliminate her right now. If he found out, the priest must also know about Anna's ability. Killing her now would be like stirring up a hornet's nest. Seeing Jamie standing there stunned, Ricky looked at him suspiciously and started teasing. Don't tell me you've fallen for my sister. What the hell are you talking about? Jamie yelled, but before he could do anything, Anna accurately smacked her brother on the head with the book in her hand. There's something in this book that I'm curious about. Can you explain it to me? So Ricky obediently sat next to Anna and read the book, while Jamie continued to think. I don't know if she was born with the holy power of Janus or another god. I still have to be wary of these 2 siblings. Seeing the 2 siblings engrossed in the book, Jamie decided to leave, and Ricky volunteered to walk him back. On the way, his mouth kept running, giving Jamie a headache. Was this guy born just to talk? Jamie curiously asked what Ricky wanted to do for a job. He was surprised. Then his eyes twinkled as he teased Jamie. This is the kind of question you ask a friend, right? I'm so touched. What a psycho, Jamie thought, annoyed. Ricky stopped joking and started to open up. At first, Ricky thought just living with his sister was enough. But after coming here, he had a new dream, to be chosen by Janice and become an outstanding priest. He recounted how Sin-No was chosen and went to the main church before him. Suddenly, Jamie had an epiphany. The pieces, the church, human trafficking, Levant, and the chosen ones, all fit together. Jamie hurriedly asked Ricky where he was before coming to the orphanage. He naively answered, on the streets. Jamie, already in a hurry, got even more annoyed. Before that. Ricky honestly confessed that he was in the Levant organization. Now everything was clear. Jamie smirked. It seems that Janice guy planned this from the very beginning. Meanwhile, Rush had finished his conversation with the nun. She offered to take him to where Jamie was. Night Rush happily agreed. The moment she turned her back, his expression soured, annoyed that he couldn't get any information out of her. He had a feeling that these people were somehow involved in that Chimera case. Ricky and Jamie were already waiting for the two of them at the same spot. A strange voice rang out. Oh my. It seems a distinguished guest has visited in my absence, hasn't he? The bishop stepped forward, followed by a knight with a covered face. The old man greeted Jamie warmly. Jamie recognized him as the one who had come to his father to ask for an operating permit. Rush also introduced himself as being from Fear, causing the old man to feign surprise. While the two of them exchanged some empty pleasantries, Jamie observed them meticulously. Rush must have some purpose for coming all the way to HYSH, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Rush suddenly sensed a strange energy emanating from the knight following the bishop. It was definitely a powerful holy force, but it was mixed with other impurities. Zassa's face suddenly stiffened in astonishment. This expression did not escape Jamie's eyes. He realized there was something unusual about that night. On the way back, Jamie saw Brad was still lost in thought, so he told him the story about the kid, Sin-No, being chosen to go to the main church. Brad was a little surprised that Jamie initiated the conversation. He immediately became cheerful and spouted. Well, Ricky is such a good boy. Dreaming of becoming a priest is so noble, blah blah. But that wasn't Jamie's goal. He wanted to give this knight a little hint. Jamie gave another clue about his father wiping out the Levant gang for kidnapping and human trafficking, adding that Ricky was once a member of that gang before coming to the orphanage. Rush was naturally astonished by this news. To seal the deal, Jamie casually remarked, "Are the Janice people really a church that does charity work?" And so, he successfully guided Rush. Rush clenched his fists in anger as all the clues pointed to the Church of Janice using children as ingredients. That night after dinner, he immediately reported to Agino, who was skeptical because the Church of Janice was having a positive influence on his territory. Rush continued to talk about his suspicions regarding that night. A powerful holy force emanated from him, but Rush couldn't tell if that person was a knight of the Church of Janice or not. It seemed the holy power was mixed with something. Agino immediately understood. If it really was a chimera using holy power, he couldn't let it be. He would lead the knights right now to wipe them all out. But Rush thought they shouldn't be so hasty. First, they needed to gather concrete evidence, and he volunteered to do it. Agino, of course, didn't think he could handle this mission alone. What were his chances of winning a fight against an unknown number of opponents? Rush confidently asserted that he had the advantage in this situation. Even so, Agino still sent 3 more men with Rush. From the ceiling, 3 shadow knights landed, surprising Rush. He hadn't even noticed their presence, especially since they used longswords but appeared like true assassins. No wonder they were trusted to protect the Welltone family. And so, the evidence-gathering team, consisting of Rush and the 3 Welltone knights, was formed. While the group was dividing up their tasks, outside the window, the familiar black furball had recorded everything and reported back to Jamie. So the intention of the Janice people was to use pure children as ingredients to create chimeras. They're still such bastards. According to Jamie's speculation, the chimeras were still incomplete but were already being used, which proved that they were in a great hurry. As for the reason, the author hasn't revealed it yet. Jamie wrote a letter and had Black deliver it to Philip while he would stay in his room and access the memories of one of his two subordinates. Meanwhile, Philip and Jean were waiting for the target to appear. Jean was impatient and just wanted to search the entire village, but Philip was more patient. He only had one job to do, and that was to obey Jamie's orders. Jean sighed in boredom. They had been standing guard here for several nights, and still no drama had occurred. Thump, thump. The sound of rushing footsteps put Philip on alert. The knight drew his sword and shouted, "I will kill you." He swung his sword powerfully towards Jean. Startled, he jumped up to dodge the deadly blade. Both of them recognized the powerful holy force the knight was using, brutally and without mercy. The knight seemed to have gone mad, constantly mumbling the word kill. Philip quickly told Jean to go inform Jamie. Jean clicked his tongue and turned to leave. The knight noticed and immediately rushed forward, swinging his sword at Jean, who couldn't react in time. "Get down." Philip lunged, pushing Jean out of the window. As Jean fell, he looked at Philip and yelled, "Brother." Philip was slashed across the torso by his holy sword. Before collapsing, he mumbled two words, "Master. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear." Jamie set up a barrier around the house, stepping down from the window. "I am here, my loyal servants." Only 3 people remained in the room. Philip lay battered at Jamie's feet. Fortunately, since he's a zombie, he can't die. Jamie remarked about his new toy. "Inside here, no one will know what's happening. It's just that this 6th class magic is a bit draining." The knight didn't want to chat. He lunged at Jamie. Jamie used 5th class magic, gravity. "Come and get it." Gravity, just as its name implies, increases the gravitational force, making the knight unable to move. Next, bind, tightly restraining his body with summoned corpses. The knight struggled to get up. His strength was no joke. Jamie cast sacrifice, summoning souls, and creating a huge explosion. The knight immediately sensed the danger. Before him was a magic sphere that was accumulating energy and about to explode. Afterward, there was a thick cloud of dust and smoke. Jamie was surprised that the knight was still standing and mumbling a few curses. He raised his sword and charged again, but it seemed today was not his lucky day. Jamie cast puppet magic, attaching magical strings to the knight's soul, restraining and controlling him. The knight was bound tightly. He couldn't analyze the danger, nor could he hold his sword. Jamie stepped closer to him. The corpse fragments that entered his body from the recent explosion, everything that once belonged to him now belonged to Jamie. The knight realized his body was losing control. He couldn't use dark magic. The best option now was to escape. A bright blue flame started emanating from him. Jamie's face darkened when he realized the knight was self-destructing, and he rushed towards him. He pierced the knight with a shadow arm, but the explosion was still building up. Not only that, Jamie couldn't pull his hand out. There was no time. Holy power erupted from the knight, throwing Jamie back as the room filled with blue light. Luckily, his dark magic saved him. He couldn't believe the knight broke through his darkness by releasing his maximum holy energy. But for every power, there is a counter. Jamie's dark magic began absorbing the light. The knight tried to escape through the window, but Jamie said, "Not a chance," and attacked, making him stagger. From his back, long tentacles with sharp teeth emerged. Jamie realized that was his chimera form, but it looked so damn terrifying he felt he'd never be able to eat grilled squid again. Jamie immediately used chains to bind the knight tightly. He was still struggling with his tentacles. Death Explosion, a magic that creates a dark explosion which destroys any kind of armor. The knight realized he couldn't move. He had reached his limit. He still had one last resort. From the hole in the knight's back, a strange object shot out. It moved nimbly and escaped through the window. Jamie watched in annoyance. Oh my God, his real body is a walking lump of flesh. How disgusting. Philip finally had a chance to talk to him. On the floor, only the mutated corpse of the unfortunate knight remained. His true self had escaped. Philip was dumbfounded. He can just get away like that? He thought they would have a thrilling chase. He immediately asked Jamie. In all his time, he had never been taught that it was okay to let an enemy escape. Jamie had anticipated this. He had planted a trace of dark magic all over his body when he used the shadow hand. From now on, he could find him anytime. Meanwhile, in his study, The old bishop was practicing Chinese calligraphy. Suddenly, there was a movement at the window. From outside, a lump of flesh with an eye on it appeared. Damn it! There's no way it could be defeated. He trembled, holding his brainchild in his hands. It was the core of his research, a chimera holy knight with terrifying holy energy. Philip was still curious. If the enemy knew they were cursed with black magic, they could track Jamie down. He was helpless against his clueless questions, but well, he still had to explain it for the readers too. Currently, Jamie's power is vastly different from black magic. Even though he didn't understand why his current black magic was so weak compared to holy power, he was still insanely powerful when using his god-slaying power. It is a type of darkness created to kill holy beings and completely erase their existence without leaving a trace. That's why those idiots using holy power can't possibly find any information about him. Jamie brought the knight's corpse back to his room through his spatial gate. Just then, Jean opened the door worriedly. Hello? Is Philip still alive? Then his expression changed when he realized Jamie was here. He thought Philip would be just a pile of bones after fighting that crazy knight. Jamie pointed at him in annoyance. While his brother-in-arms was cut in half, Jean was only just now showing up. He scratched his head in embarrassment. He had been knocked unconscious from the fall earlier, so he took the chance to sleep a little. Jamie couldn't believe a zombie could get knocked out. Bow your head, now, Jamie ordered Jean, then sat on him while talking. Perhaps they had acted too quickly and attracted their attention. Now, both of them had to be extremely discreet in their actions. There was one more important thing. Jamie restored Philip's body. Even though he's a zombie, that doesn't mean he's immortal. If he got slashed a few more times like that, even Jamie wouldn't be able to call his soul back. Before leaving, Jamie warned Jean to stick close to and protect Philip if he didn't want to be all alone. Meanwhile, the bishop was furious that the veteran-level church knight chimera, combined with 4 other life forms, had reverted back to this moving lump of flesh. He considered all possibilities about the perpetrator. The first person he thought of was Agino with his terrifying power. But that thought was immediately dismissed. If it really was the Count, this lump of flesh wouldn't have been able to crawl back. Moreover, the link between him and the knight had been severed in an instant. It would require a barrier to do that, so it must be a powerful mage in this territory. His brain immediately jumped to Jamie, but he quickly shook his head. He thought Jamie could only be at level 4 at most, while fighting his chimera would require level 5 or higher. Just who the hell is that strong? While he was racking his brain, a blade was placed against his neck. So your second plan failed too? It seems I don't need to hear your answer. A man in a black cloak stood behind him. Trembling with fear, the bishop denied it. Oh really? Then what the hell is that? The dark-lipped man said while pressing the knife to his neck, drawing blood. He hastily said that a troublesome person got in the way. The dark-lipped man threatened him. If he didn't do his job, he should prepare to offer his own body for the experiment. If the Count found out, it would all be over. Then he vanished like smoke. The bishop finally dared to breathe heavily. That was one of the 7 knights of the Church of Janus. They protect the archbishop at the main church and are all at the master level. The bishop slammed his hand on the table angrily. After he completes his experiment, he would surely climb to the position of archbishop and show them not to look down on others. At the Welltone mansion, Jamie was examining the knight's corpse he had just acquired. Those Janus people are really big-brained. To think they found a way to create a chimera that wields holy power. Now it's time for the autopsy. Jamie began to separate each part of the knight's body. An insect leg, fire-resistant internal organs, compound insect eyes, and the indispensable core, a human body. A total of 4 life forms with magic resistance and high speed were combined. The core was a small sphere containing holy power, which was how they turned the chimera into a knight. But he couldn't guess their purpose. Whatever the reason, this act was disgusting. As always, Janus treated humans like insects and objects. Jamie recalled the words of his fallen comrades and couldn't contain his anger. They all perished under their cruelty. The reason Jamie returned to this world after thousands of years was to put an end to Janus, those 12 bastard gods. In his past life, they may have sealed him, but in this life, he would take everything back. Meanwhile, the bishop was still stressed out about his deadline. He was on a call with the one conducting the experiment, his angry voice coming through the crystal ball. The bishop apologized profusely. Who knew that someone stronger than their knight would suddenly appear? Damn it, what are you planning to do? I'm sick and tired of this. The experimenter shouted. The bishop gave a sinister smile. Failure is the mother of success. Now, we'll start over from scratch. Choose one more person for the experiment. The person on the other end immediately thought of Anna, the child qualified to be a saintess, but the bishop was agitated by anything related to the saintess. He refused to use the saintess to create a chimera. In any case, he already had a target, a child who worshipped Janus like an idol and was the saintess' only relative, Ricky. The next morning, a nun came to find Ricky and told everyone to gather in the chapel. In the hall, Ben was calling Ricky over to where Anna was. Ricky's face darkened when he saw his friend sitting with his sister. He immediately ran over to separate them, determined not to let Ben stick to his sister. Everyone was curious about the purpose of today's gathering. It would be great if someone else was chosen. That was Anna's thought. The bishop appeared on the podium with a sickeningly innocent face. Today, I have good news for you, my little dears. Everyone buzzed with excitement, hearing about a miracle from his mouth. Could someone be chosen like Sino? The bishop chuckled. Ahihi, you guessed right. This time, the god Janus has also chosen one of you. In reality, he couldn't hide the sinister smile on his face. In his eyes, the children were just a bunch of ignorant fools who wanted to be chosen. But the story he concocted about an orphan becoming a knight sounded pretty good. It was a blessing in the thoughts of that damn old man. He cleared his throat, told the children to be quiet, and then announced the chosen one was, as expected, the unfortunate Ricky, the next to become a chimera. The next day was a rainy day in Hayes. Jamie was enjoying tea with his beloved mother. Of course, he wasn't happy at all, but he still had to say some cheesy lines. The smell of the rain is so refreshing. Being with you, mother, is even better. As expected, Jamie's mother hugged him tightly in happiness. Only we know how hard Jamie is trying. The butler knocked and entered to announce a visitor for Jamie, a commoner boy claiming to be his friend. The butler asked if he should send him away. Jamie had no idea when he made friends with a commoner. A name popped into his head, and Jamie ordered the butler to let the person in. That person was none other than the unlucky Ricky. He nervously greeted Jamie's mother. She was naturally happy to see her son had a friend visiting and couldn't skip the pleasantries. She was very curious how Ricky and Jamie met. Ricky, as if someone had scratched his itch, immediately rattled on about the clear, windy night when he was stealing and met Jamie. Of course, Jamie quickly covered Ricky's mouth before the story of him sneaking out at night was revealed. Jamie gave an awkward smile and told his mother to go rest first. Jamie's mother thought he was just shy about having a friend over. She smiled happily and made a condition. He had to give her a goodbye kiss. Jamie froze. That challenge was even more difficult, but in the end, Jamie had to close his eyes and kiss his mother's cheek. This scene left Ricky petrified. He couldn't believe someone as grumpy and irritable as Jamie would also kiss his mother's cheek. After his mother left, Jamie returned to his usual grumpy expression and asked Ricky his purpose for coming here. Ricky happily told him that he was the chosen one. He would be leaving soon, so he wanted to say goodbye to Jamie. Now it was Jamie's turn to be petrified. This news came faster than he had expected. That afternoon, the night rush was in low spirits because he couldn't find that knight despite turning the church upside down. Was that guy buried underground or something? Just then, Ricky was leaving the mansion and saw Zash. The boy smiled. Hello, mister. Come on, kid. You should call me Big Brother, Rush said, hurt by being called old. He wondered why Ricky came to see Jamie today. Ricky continued to boast about receiving a miracle from the god Janus. He would be heading to the main church tomorrow morning. Rush froze. So this was how they deceived children. How could they, servants of a god, be so shameless? Rush suppressed his anger, patted Ricky's head, and encouraged the boy, saying he would become a good priest. Ricky was still happy and innocent, unaware of the impending storm. After Ricky left, Rush called the 3 Wellington Shadow Knights, his face filled with killing intent. Tomorrow morning, we will follow the carriage Ricky is in. He would show those animals what a festival is. The next morning, Ricky, moved, held a bouquet of flowers given by his friends as he left. Ben seized the opportunity to say he would take care of Anna for Ricky. Ricky hugged his sister tightly before their departure, telling her to eat well at home and wait for the day he gets discharged. Oops, the day he becomes a priest. A tearful farewell scene before Ricky became a chimera. The boy got on the carriage and left the orphanage, with the knight Rush silently following behind. At this moment, Jamie sat in his room observing everything through the omnipotent lens of black. Now it was time for him to find out which corner that moving lump of flesh was hiding in. After searching for a while, Jamie discovered traces of his dark mana inside the Janus Church. To create a holy chimera, 3 things are needed. First, a sacrifice to use as material. Second, a chimera creator to conduct the experiment. And finally, a high-ranking priest to infuse it with holy power. There's only one high-ranking priest around here, none other than that two-faced bishop of Janus. Jamie believed that Rush and the knights would be able to clear out that laboratory, while he would be the one to deal with the bishop. And just like that, they would all be dead. In the bishop's room, he was extremely excited as his goal was about to be realized. The dream of turning an orphan into a church knight, but God's blessing comes with hardship. Can Ricky overcome this experiment? He reached his hand towards the two-way mirror, preparing to grab Ricky, but Jamie wouldn't let him have his way. Tonight, he would be playing with Jamie, not Ricky. The bishop's entire body was pulled backward, and he fell to the ground. His old back couldn't handle the impact, so his face darkened with anger as he said, "Which son of a bitch dares to ambush me?" "For a man of the church, you have a foul mouth," Jamie said, radiating pure dark energy, which surprised the bishop. But in that first moment, the old man deduced that Jamie was the one who had bullied his church knight. "How dare you interfere with my plan?" He clasped his hands in prayer to be granted power, creating a vast holy ground in the middle of the room. His power would be amplified many times over within the holy ground under the god's protection. Jamie frowned. If this was a bishop-level holy ground, the old man would surely have the strength to crush stone with his bare hands. The bishop shook his hand with a cool demeanor, declaring that he would end this, and charged at Jamie. "I will purify you with this punch." The bishop poured all his martial arts essence into the punch, but it only grazed Jamie's shoulder. Jamie feigned surprise, causing the old man to delude himself and burst out laughing. "See? Are you scared of me now?" Suddenly, a strange idea popped into the old man's head. He would turn the boy into a material as well. If this attack landed, everything would be complete. "You call this power?" Jamie sneered. His magic enveloped the old man's fist, leaving him no time to react. "How dare you act tough in front of a 3-generation villainous dark magician? You even summoned a holy ground to nullify my dark magic?" But the old man wasn't powerful enough to suppress Jamie's dark magic. Jamie crushed his arm, and the cracking sound was almost audible. Next, so as not to let it go to waste, Jamie absorbed the old man's pathetic holy ground. "Impossible. I can't believe it," the old man mumbled. "This should be impossible, but with Jamie, anything can happen." He blasted the bishop away, sending him crashing into a wall. The old man's back cracked, and he coughed up blood, a truly deserving sight. Jamie approached. There were many things he was curious about regarding the old man's plan. Like a true villain, the bishop wouldn't tell him anything. "Don't get your hopes up," Jamie said. "I don't need your permission to pry open that worthless brain of yours." Jamie invaded the old man's memories, causing him bone-deep pain, making him regret not just answering earlier. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, the mad scientist was going crazy because the bishop hadn't arrived. "That damned Lincoln. The experiment is being delayed. Where the hell are you?" The subordinate hurried off to check to avoid his wrath, but it was too late. He finished him off instantly. "Too slow. You're also sluggish." Suddenly, he sensed someone above. When the knights burst in, he realized the bishop had been followed. Rush and the well-toned shadow knights checked every nook and cranny. One of them felt a breeze coming from behind this bookshelf. Rush glanced over and saw a strangely clean book. He took it out to have a look, and unexpectedly, it was the very book that opened their secret base. Rush frowned. He felt the air smelled a bit off, so he ordered everyone to prepare their weapons. Just then, from the pitch-black basement below, a chain shot out with lightning speed. Rush swung his sword to block it, but it was useless against such power, and he was thrown back. But he managed to stand his ground. This attack proved they were in the right place. A giant chimera emerged, holding a mace in its hand. Meanwhile, Jamie had invaded the bishop's brain. They wanted to create a mighty army, no matter the cost, just to fulfill some worthless prophecy. Jamie ordered the old man to confess everything he had just told him, then added more brainwashing power so he wouldn't reveal anything about him. And now, it was time for Jamie to take the stage. He finally had an adult's body, but it belonged to this old and ugly bishop. He almost let out a curse. The mad scientist couldn't contain his anger at being stood up by his lover, the bishop. Though it was a bit of a pity, he had no other choice but to let this thing out to handle the rest. Damn it, it's all that useless bitch Lincoln's fault. He went over to Ricky, admiring his body. If only you had holy power in the body, things would have been different. All he needed was a strong, 8-pack body to complete his great work. Sorry, I'm late. The bishop's voice rang out, causing him to whip around and berate him for standing him up. But he suddenly softened his tone when he saw the bishop's body was covered in wounds. Jamie, disguised as the bishop, said he was ambushed by a suspicious person and was late because he had to deal with the intruder. The scientist was startled. After all these years, a rival suddenly appeared. More importantly, that rival was probably from the same group as the people who ambushed them. If they delayed any longer, the experiment would be interfered with. He remembered the most important thing now wasn't to chat, but to get the body the bishop had promised to bring him. Even with an intruder, he couldn't stop the experiment. He had already sent the sample, so there was nothing to worry about. Jamie had no choice but to give him the body, but he didn't know what he had sent. This part wasn't in the bishop's memories. The scientist held the gift. I mean, the body he had been waiting for so long. The final step was to place it on Ricky and wait for an awesome chimera to be born. What do you think? He turned back to look at Jamie with an affectionate gaze. Jamie forced a smile. Well, it will definitely be stronger than the previous failure. He had no idea why the man was suddenly asking him. Hearing an answer that wasn't to his liking, he sulked. Why do you always state the obvious? Ignoring Jamie, he continued the experiment. The final step was to inject an anesthetic into the body so it could merge with Ricky. Lincoln, you're happy too, aren't you? He said, unable to contain his excitement. But Jamie replied indifferently, which made him feel that something was wrong. He glanced at him. Who are you? Huh, what are you suddenly saying? I'm your Lincoln. Jamie didn't get it. Is there some kind of connection between crazy people? He attacked in anger. You can't fool me. You're not Lincoln. Meanwhile, Rush's group had defeated the Chimera and its companions and were heading down to the basement. Suddenly, the person behind him was slammed into the wall. Rush turned around, his eyes widening when he saw a giant hand pressing him into the wall. The whole group was ambushed. The red-haired woman shouted, "Run, everyone!" Then she slashed at its arm to clear a path for Rush. Rush could sense that this chimera was on another level. Even its facial expression was more menacing. This place was too narrow, so Rush couldn't launch an attack. He needed more space, so he slipped past it to a more open area. Rush used his special move, Sword of Judgment, to slash through the chimera's body. It fell into a deep sleep for 5 seconds, then woke up, startling Rush. This scenario wasn't in the contract with the director. Because he was careless, he couldn't dodge its direct attack at this close range. Is this the end for me? A slash to the chimera's hand that was attacking Rush made it roar in pain. 2 Shadow Knights appeared just in time and signaled a retreat. But they wouldn't bring the other knight back with them, because their orders were to help Rush complete his mission, so they wouldn't care about anything else. The female knight charged forward to fight it and clear a path. While it was distracted, Rush and the other person would retreat. Although the female knight would surely die in a one-on-one fight with the chimera, they were Shadow Knights, acting to achieve the most optimal result. Absolutely obedient to their master, their lives were mere tools controlled by his very commands. Rush, on the other hand, found this way of completing the mission by sacrificing their own lives absurd. As a servant of justice, he could never forgive it. Quick, go! The female knight shouted while trying to resist. The ceiling collapsed from the impacts, burying both of them in rubble before their eyes. The chimera's arm reached out, making both Rush and the other man's hearts skip a beat. It sat up, holding the female knight in its hand. Sir Rush, we must get out of here, but Rush couldn't leave her behind. The perverted chimera gradually tightened its grip, making the female knight's bones ache. Rush, boiling with rage, yelled, "Let her go right now." He drew his sword, In the name of the goddess of mercy and judgment, fear, may Saint Martial protect me. Rush swung his sword, imbued with holy power, through the chimera's body. The attack was very powerful but required the right moment to activate. This time, the chimera didn't just sleep for 5 seconds. It went into an eternal slumber. Rush didn't want to, but in the end, he had to use the power of the Holy Judicator. They are 7 church knights granted holy power by the goddess of virtue and judgment, fear. Its power has a very short duration and severe side effects, but it can unleash an immense amount of holy power. The knight who was ambushed woke up in shock. No one could believe he was still alive, not even himself. Rush was proud, for this was the power granted by fear, to execute punishment on the wicked and bestow infinite mercy upon the good. However, once the Holy Judicator's power disappears, all the pain they endured would be transferred to Rush, but he wouldn't tell them that. Now they had a more important mission ahead of them, to catch the ringleader red-handed. In the room, Jamie finally had to drop his disguise as the bishop. The mad scientist was furious that he dared to impersonate his lover and, on top of that, ruined their experiment. Hilarious. I don't think someone who's mutilated his own body has any right to say that to me, Jamie sneered. He smirked. It's true that ordinary people can't appreciate my art, so I will give you a special viewing of my once-in-a-millennium masterpiece, turning a person into a bird. Jamie wondered what kind of artistic sense he had, but he was obsessed with chimera wings. What terrible taste. What? Who gave you the right to criticize my work? He gnashed his teeth. But Jamie hadn't performed his final act yet. He pulled out his key ingredient. That last one was just a fake. Oops, my hand slipped, Jamie said as he used dark magic to crush the grotesque body. The mad scientist's blood rushed to his head. Damn you, you filthy dwarf. Jamie pouted. I only broke one of his toys, and he gets this angry. What a cheapskate. And now, he would take him to a place where the two of them could have a little chat. A teleportation circle appeared on the floor. He was a bit surprised, but it was fine. He just needed to destroy this magic circle, and it would disappear. But no matter how much force he used, the circle wouldn't break, and so he was teleported out of his nest. Why? Why wasn't it destroyed? He asked, grinding his teeth in fury. What other reason could there be? It's because he's weak as hell. And now it was time for Jamie to have some fun with him in the forest. After they were done playing, he would turn him into his subordinate. You little brat. He launched his tentacles towards Jamie. He gracefully leaped onto a high branch. Everything in the basement should be settled by now. He was just as curious, as he had sent 2 of his elite subordinates to take care of the knights. Jamie was surprised, but he revealed nothing more, because now that you are with me, you are not allowed to think of other things. He coiled his tentacles around his arm and punched the tree trunk hard. Jamie jumped to another tree. He knew that one of his underlings had been destroyed, but he had already sent 2 more, so they would not be able to return alive. You're completely insane. Jamie looked at him with a judgmental gaze. He flew up to where Jamie was to talk more easily. It's not insanity, it's called confidence. Jamie could see 9 different species within his body, so he could no longer be called human, but a monster. Besides, his combination of those abilities was also good. All the more reason Jamie had to make him his subordinate. Meanwhile, Rush's group had found the laboratory. First, they had to find Ricky. They had 20 minutes left before the Holy Judicator's power disappeared. Suddenly, a sharp blast of air shot towards Rush. Fortunately, someone jumped out and pulled him away before he was hit. A chimera that used sword aura appeared. This queen bee is pretty big. While Rush was still bewildered by its appearance, a demon horse chimera and an ogre appeared on the other side, with bodies even more robust than his. They were all monsters that even an expert level would find difficult to deal with. Even he couldn't fight them. But as a knight fighting for justice, he couldn't be afraid. Rush took a deep breath and signaled for the team to prepare for battle. A few chimeras, at worst, they'd all die together. In another room, Ricky groggily woke up after a sound sleep. Ricky looked around for the priest, but no one was there. His eyes fell upon a giant jar, containing half of Sinnoh's corpse. Ricky was stunned, as if he understood everything. Is this what people call God's blessing? To dare call such a cruel thing a blessing is truly disgusting. Ricky trembled with both anger and fear, but he told himself to stay calm and escape. Leaving Sinnoh behind made Ricky feel guilty, but he was determined to come back and find help. The church, Janice. He would burn their names into his mind. While escaping, Ricky heard the sound of fighting. Could it be the knights coming to rescue him? For some reason, Ricky's heart pounded. Blood splattered on the floor. Ricky was overjoyed when he saw Rush. Mr. Rush, fighting back, snapped, "Call me Big Brother, kid." The horse chimera saw a new target and charged towards Ricky. Two knights immediately rushed forward to stop it. The queen bee chimera dashed out to block their way. Rush shouted, "Ricky, run!" But his body couldn't move. It was the first time in his life he had faced such a dangerous situation. Rush finally caught up with the chimera, attacking it with all his might before its hooves could crush Ricky. But perhaps it was too late. The desolate, hazy scene before him made him despair. He had even used his ultimate move, but still couldn't save the boy. Suddenly, Ricky's hand shot out as his entire body emitted a brilliant golden light. But of course, it wasn't a protagonist's aura. Although Ricky was alive, Rush saw the figure of the horse chimera charging and told him to run over to him immediately. Rush embraced Ricky, assessing the situation. The queen bee chimera was running rampant, and he only had about 10 minutes left before his holy judicator power disappeared. He couldn't fight and protect Ricky at the same time, so he told him to escape first. Ricky hesitated, but if he stayed, he would only get in their way. So, Ricky bolted and ran upstairs. That left Rush to face the burly horse chimera. It was just an experiment, yet it had a body that looked like it had spent years in the gym. Unacceptable. Rush had to destroy it. While Ricky was running, he recalled the strange event from earlier. A stream of light had enveloped him before the chimera. He could feel his stomach churning and a strange sensation emanating from that monster. It was just like Levant, an evil that sent shivers down his spine. Ricky saw a single door. After stepping through, he was back in the dense forest. Even now, he couldn't believe that salvation and faith were all just lies. His sister, Anna, must still be at the orphanage alone. If anyone dared to touch her, he would never forgive them. Suddenly, Ricky felt a terrifying sensation welling up. For some reason, he had an inkling that he should head in that direction. In the forest, Jamie was still toying with the mad scientist. He thought the boy was good at dodging, but there was no way he could dodge this move. Tentacles coiled into a tornado-like spiral and shot out. Getting hit by just one would be enough to kill him. Jamie flew and leaped through the air. The power was indeed immense. A mere graze had torn his shirt. But the magic he had prepared was just enough to counter it, so there was nothing to worry about. A sphere of light shot out, but it had no effect on him. "You little runt, playtime is over. It's time for you to beg me." He raised his arm, unleashing hundreds of tentacles that surrounded Jamie, trapping him inside. But Jamie teleported elsewhere, so he couldn't catch him. "Damn it, where are you?" Jamie sighed in relief, then summoned a dark space. The scientist realized his intention was to trap him. But how could a simple barrier contain his ability to spread his wings? He attacked the place where Jamie was hiding, summoning a storm of tentacles that rained down from the sky like stone pillars. Jamie erected a defensive barrier. The more they fought, the more interesting he found him. His ability to combine chimeras with magic was incredibly creative. But that was all there was to it. If he were the main character, he might have a chance of winning. "You've lasted longer than I thought. How about this?" He clasped his hands together as if to pray. Jamie suddenly appeared behind him, startling him. He was sure the boy was down there. So how did he get up here? "You don't know? This is the real me," Jamie said. In fact, there were two Jamies, thanks to the fourth circle dark magic, doppelganger. It creates a copy that can use the exact same abilities as the original. One of them only disappears when they stare at each other. If you look down on others, you're bound to fail. Especially a smelly corpse like you. What? He gritted his teeth at the insult. Jamie could see that magic was causing his body to rot, but this would be nothing if he could just destroy the boy and continue his experiments. However, Jamie had already calculated this. He had prepared a bunch of dark spheres and spread them around him. They touched his body, causing him to scream in extreme pain. The dark spheres triple the sensation of pain wherever they touch. This is the feeling of a body gradually rotting away. Seeing that he still had the strength to curse, Jamie used gravity to crush him down. The aerial battle finally ended. Black, who had been carrying Jamie on its back, could finally rest. He tried his best to get up with his battered body. Jamie didn't know to what extent he had destroyed his own body to remain conscious after enduring so much pain. It seemed he couldn't make him a subordinate because he was beyond saving. At least he would get some information before killing him. "My slaves," he mumbled, and two burly chimeras appeared to protect him. Jamie had miscalculated. He didn't expect him to still have a few chimeras as bodyguards. He had used too much mana earlier, making it a bit difficult to deal with them. First of all, Jamie would never let him die peacefully. He shot through his chest. Dying instantly would be less painful, but it seemed he was still alive to feel the pain. Jamie just said that, but he couldn't believe he withstood that last attack. In the end, how should he destroy him? Meanwhile, Ricky was still wandering. The closer he got, the more nauseous he felt, but for some reason, something was urging him to go on. Boom. A loud explosion startled Ricky. He turned to leave before he got caught up in it. Suddenly, Jamie flew out of nowhere. He didn't have enough mana to create a shield and was sent flying. He wouldn't be able to block the next attack. Ricky didn't understand why Jamie had appeared right in front of him at that moment. The mad scientist was determined not to let him go. If he didn't eliminate Jamie here today, he wouldn't live peacefully in the future. The Chimera prepared to unleash a super powerful attack. "No, Jamie." Ricky rushed out without thinking when he saw Jamie was about to be beaten to a pulp. "Get back!" Jamie shouted, but Ricky couldn't stop. His body moved on its own when he saw a friend in danger. Another explosion sent dust and smoke everywhere. Jamie was battered after the blast, but Ricky had long since passed out. Jamie trembled, his face darkening before Ricky's body. Memories came flooding back. Once again, someone had to die because of him. Everyone had died just to save him. No matter which life it was, things always happened this way. What a touching scene from a mere test subject. "Now I'll send you off with him." He burst out laughing while Jamie was sinking in despair. His lover, best friend, comrades, disciples, they had all sacrificed themselves for him. Suddenly, darkness enveloped Jamie. The scientist felt the atmosphere around him change completely, and even heard epic music echoing from somewhere. Jamie told Ricky to lie there and wait while he dealt with that trash using the first power he ever created, one he had unintentionally forgotten, to fight against the gods. Skeletons rose from the ground. The scientist shouted, "You bastard, just how many more people are you hiding?" This was the army Jamie created to fight the gods, to confront the power of the 12 deities, called necromancy. He laughed at the sight of the low-level, pathetic skeletons, but as the old saying goes, never underestimate others. These were all those who had died at his hands. Even in death, their grudge must be avenged. The skeletons charged, tearing apart the chimeras. Even when ripped in half, they regenerated, having already experienced death. "Get back. Stay away." The scientist had no strength to resist. A bony hand seized him, covering his mouth. "Less talking. This is hell, a place where death harvests death, and it is also Jamie's territory." After his head was slammed into the ground, he rested in eternal sleep. Jamie looked at him and sighed. He had finally destroyed him. Suddenly, a seed of life came out of his mouth. It was an artifact that recharges itself with life force. Even with his Bodis restructuring, his life force was too abnormal. So this is what he was hiding. An unexpected harvest. With the seed of life, Jamie could overcome the limits of this small body. Jamie forgot the skeletons were still awaiting their reward, but there was no budget for bonuses. Now, they had to return to the earth. From using too much power, Jamie's body couldn't take it anymore, but he couldn't pass out here because he couldn't let Ricky die. Instead of meeting his ancestors, it would be better for him to become my subordinate. At least he'll get to live on. Jamie deployed his dark magic, like a ray of light banishing his own darkness. "I don't understand what's happening." A voice rang out. A goddess appeared, protecting Ricky from Jamie's dark magic. "Who are you to dare steal what belongs to me?" Fear. Jamie couldn't imagine meeting her here. Fear opened her eyes and looked at him. "You know me?" Meanwhile, the bishop was on his way to the count's house under Jamie's orders to confess, but he was beheaded on the way. "Useless fool. We are eliminating Hayes." A person with silver hair and dark lips said, "Begin the purge of heretics." Rush sighed. He had barely managed to finish within the time limit. It hurt like hell, but luckily, no one was sacrificed. Suddenly, a light shone down. Rush was astonished, as this was the sign of the goddess Fear descending to the world. Jamie was bewildered, wondering how she had descended. Even if it was just an illusion, the burden of causality was immense. Did you not hear me? Jamie clutched his head before the power of light that countered his dark magic. I only know that Ricky's holy power belongs to you, Jamie said hastily. The goddess Fear didn't understand why he still intended to turn Ricky into an undead subordinate even after knowing that, but all he wanted was for Ricky not to die. You say being undead isn't death? That's an act of desecrating the dead. Fear was furious at Jamie's behavior. He gritted his teeth, equally angry. You bastards. You are the ones who disregard life. After sacrificing all of humanity, how dare you? Fear's face froze at Jamie's words, but she couldn't say anything else. In any case, Ricky would become her apostle. If Jamie turned him into a slave, Fear would not forgive him. An apostle is closer to a god than anyone else. Their existence strengthens the Pope's position, and they wield enough power to be called the strongest holy knight. Jamie knew Ricky had some holy power, but he never expected it was enough to be chosen as an apostle. Perhaps that's why Fear was able to descend. This was more interesting than he thought. I am very sorry. How can I make up for this? The darkness has already claimed him. Half of Ricky had already become Jamie's subordinate, so he really wanted to provoke Fear. Just as expected, she became enraged. As a result, Jamie suffered a severe headache, but he still had to endure it to confront her. If he died, Ricky would go with him. Do you think your threats will work on me? Fear said. But Jamie knew very well that she only had one apostle. If she lost him, it would take a long time to find another. More importantly, for a god to descend without being bound, they need an apostle. Fear was cornered, but Jamie had no intention of getting rid of Ricky because he was his friend. More importantly, the current world doesn't need apostles because it is peacefully proceeding according to the 12 gods' plan. A system created by the 12 gods themselves, so why would Fear need an apostle? Just how much do you know? Fear gritted her teeth. Jamie boldly made a speculation. The most sacred god, one who loves all, so full of love that she would seize power to reconstruct evil. Perhaps Fear had been abandoned. Fear was speechless, which proved everything was true. She couldn't speak lies that went against her divinity, so she was forced to remain silent. Diablo von Fear. I am his legacy, Jamie said. Fear couldn't believe it because she was sure he had died thousands of years ago, yet he appeared right when she was in a bind. Jamie proposed an alliance with Fear. If she agreed, she should come to his Afton to discuss it properly. Fear left Ricky behind. If things went well, he would have a very useful tool. Ricky groggily opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was Jamie's judgmental face. Are you okay? Ricky shot up when he saw Jamie bleeding. His eyes had turned purple, and his own body felt strange too. Even in his state, Ricky was worried about others first. He was truly kind to others. In the end, Jamie decided to tell Ricky the truth that he had used dark magic to turn him into this. Surely, Ricky would resent him. But Ricky just smiled and said, Okay, little bro. I get it. That's it. His reaction was not what Jamie expected. But Ricky didn't think dark mages were necessarily evil. In his eyes, Jamie was the best person in the world. Jamie then said he had also intended to get rid of Ricky's sister and had put Ricky in danger. A normal person wouldn't be able to forgive him. But Ricky wasn't a normal person. In the end, Jamie saved him and didn't kill Anna, so all things considered, he was still a good person. Damn you. You fool, Jamie muttered in frustration, but suddenly, the numerous wounds on his body began to heal as he held Ricky's hand. Ricky had a feeling it would work, so he tried it. He didn't expect it to actually be effective. Moreover, Rush was coming, so they had to go. Jamie didn't forget to tell him not to mention what he had just told him. Ricky laughed. He might look a bit dazed, but he wasn't that stupid. The next morning at the Hayes branch of the Janus Church, inquisitors from the Janus Church came to apologize to Count Weltone. Due to the special circumstances, they couldn't reveal their names. Why have the inquisitors come here? The Count asked. They were following orders from their superiors to hunt down heretics. In the process, they found evidence and discovered that Lincoln was a heretic. After hearing his confession, they executed him and hung his head in the middle of the market for the villagers to see. Rush was furious after learning this. These guys were using the bishop as a scapegoat, Everyone obviously knew that. That's enough. The Count motioned for Rush to stop. He praised their courage, but their mistake was daring to kill someone in Welton's territory. Do you want to start a war or something? The man immediately knelt before the Count's wrath. He had always been firm in his position as the judge of this territory. No one could harm another person in Hysh without his permission, and the Janus Church had crossed the line. He trembled and begged. At this rate, he would surely be eliminated, but he couldn't back down either. So he raised his head and his voice, saying, "My Lord Count, you are truly arrogant to turn your back on the Janus Church. This is not a wise decision." Swish. His right hand flew through the air. How dare he raise his voice to the Count? After his right hand would be his glib mouth. If he wanted to live, he'd take the Janus Church and get out of Welton's territory. He clutched his arm, trembling. Nothing was as the girl had told him. Rush was surprised. The Count didn't mention the chimeras at all, focusing only on the fact that he was the lord of this land. If this continued, they would surely gain the upper hand. He kowtowed, apologizing and promising compensation, begging the Count to forgive him. He couldn't forget that Hysh was a stepping stone for their eastward expansion, so they absolutely had to stay here. "I will not take back my words. You have lost my trust. I will sever all ties with the Janus Church." Count Welton didn't say another word and left directly. It was the first time Rush had witnessed the Count's way of doing things. It was so cool. He almost felt sorry for these disgusting people. Afterward, the Janus Church had to pay a huge compensation and leave. And a special guest visited Ricky and Anna, so shocked that the little girl's eyes opened. Rush knelt and introduced himself again, Holy Knight of the Church of Fear. And these two siblings will become symbols of the Church of Fear as the Apostle and the Saintess. One day, Anna will awaken as a Saintess, seeing through the world with her eyes. Afton will do its best to welcome them both, and Rush will officially be able to protect the two siblings. Is that true? Ricky was moved that his sister would be able to see. He didn't care about Afton or Fear. His whole life was just his sister, Anna. The simultaneous appearance of an apostle and a saintess was an omen that great trouble was coming. But no matter what kind of trouble was approaching, Rush vowed to protect these two children. And so, the two of them became completely dependent on the Church of Fear, while poor Jamie Welton would have to face a great trial. The 12 gods were currently divided into factions, so Janus tried to create Holy Knight chimeras, while Fear was isolated to a certain extent. To be sure, he had no choice but to go to Afton. That's why Jamie had to do this now. He took a deep breath, tensed his facial muscles to create the sweetest smile, and said in a creepy voice, "Dearest mother." His little sister had no idea what crazy thing her brother was doing, suddenly appearing at the tea table, but the thick-skinned Jamie clung to his mother, using the excuse of wanting to drink tea. "But you're usually so bored by tea," his mother said bluntly. Jamie was hit where it hurt, but still had to deny it. "Could it be that you want me to do something for you?" It's true that nothing can escape a mother's eyes. Jamie sat down, pretending to be casual. "It's just that I'm in the mood for tea today. Just tell me what you want." "I'm listening." This was the sentence Jamie had been waiting for. He just wanted to take a trip to Afton. Luckily, that was his mother's hometown. Jamie had to make up an excuse that Afton had mountains and huge water bubbles. Deep down, he just wanted to die on the spot. "Oh, is that so? Now I really want you to act cute." His mother saw Jamie stiffen and pretended to refuse. Jamie, or rather Diablo, had never surrendered to any difficulty, except when facing this mother. He made a heart shape with his hands and forced out an adorable smile. "I love you so much, Mom." "Of course, they'll listen to my adorable son's request," his mother said with satisfaction. Then she suddenly remembered they had already planned to visit her parents next week. It was a good thing she forgot, or she wouldn't have witnessed Jamie's cute, wheedling face. Jamie left the garden with a dejected look. After this, he would definitely deal with Fear for making him do such a thing. On top of that, Jamie ran into Rush, that guy who specialized in prying into other people's business, which annoyed him. And he was even Fear's subordinate. Although Rush didn't understand what was going on, he kept encouraging him with a puppy dog face, which made Jamie want to send him straight to hell. The important thing was, why was he wandering around in his garden? Rush came to say goodbye to the Count before returning. More importantly, he wanted to meet Jamie to talk about something important. "Ricky and Anna will be coming with me," Rush said, placing a hand on Jamie's shoulder. But this has nothing to do with you. Goodbyes aren't forever, Jamie. Ricky and Anna will never forget you. Rush started his song about beautiful friendship, making Jamie's blood boil. What are you trying to say? Suddenly, Rush hugged Jamie tightly, causing his face to darken. Is this idiot lacking a woman's touch, so he's just hugging anyone? Don't be sad and don't be disappointed. This isn't the end, Rush said comforting words before leaving the dazed Jamie. This was all Fear's fault. She'd better worry about her own kids. That night, Agino was talking with his wife. He didn't understand the secret letter his father-in-law had sent him, which brought Jamie here. His wife was also helpless. She thought that even her late mother couldn't understand her father's thoughts. They would be leaving tomorrow, so Agino felt a little worried, but his wife did not, because they were escorted by Welton's strongest Fear Knights. Besides, what fool would dare touch her when her husband, the Count, was protecting her? Agino covered his mouth and chuckled, "Ahihi. This couple is always so lovey-dovey." In addition, Rush would also escort them along with Ricky and Anna. As for Jamie, he was absurdly strong while his body couldn't handle it. If you lose control of your emotions and lash out like before, I don't know if anyone will be able to stop you. I don't think we need to worry about that, the madam said, because today she saw an unforgettable expression on Jamie's face. Agino wished he could have seen that look on his son's face to satisfy this affection. Anyway, everyone makes mistakes, but the madam always has faith in their Jamie. That night, Jamie finished absorbing the seed of life by grinding it into a powder and inhaling. Absorbing it, so it took longer than expected. However, the effect was unexpectedly good. This proves that hard work grinding powder really pays off. Reaching Class 6 is now only a matter of time. There is still a long way to go to regain Jamie's peak strength, but now he can defeat an enemy on the same level as that mad scientist. Jamie went to the village where Jean and Philip were in disguise. They came out and bowed respectfully to him. Jamie announced that he would be going to Afton for a vacation for a while, so he would be absent. Afton is quite far away, so Jamie would probably be away from home for a whole month. The two of them couldn't stand pretending to be woodcutters every day to chop wood. They've already chopped down an entire forest. Do you two have a problem with that? Jamie frowned. When the tiger doesn't roar, you mistake it for a kitty. He hadn't even finished speaking, and they were already complaining. This time, Jamie would take them both with him. There was something he had forgotten. Jamie raised his hand and summoned something that reeked of darkness, making them both shriek. A house appeared before them. Jamie introduced it as his undead's warehouse. In other words, this was their new home. A house. I don't want to live in such a gloomy place. Jean and Philip continued to object. Jamie didn't understand what was wrong with these two. No one had ever dared to talk back to him like this. So Jamie kicked their asses and threw them inside. Having a home is better than being homeless. Watching the two of them fumbling inside, Jamie found them to be an interesting pair. With such distinct egos and emotions, if he nurtured them well, they would be very useful. Inside, thick black smoke dense with dark magic enveloped them. Jean thought Jamie called this a warehouse, but it was much better than he expected. After coming out, the two gave Jamie feedback on the service inside. It felt as if all their fatigue had been washed away. Of course, Jamie said, because this is my first power. That space was created with my pure power, and the undeads belonging to this power will absorb it and be strengthened. Then wouldn't you bear a great burden, Master? Philip wondered, a subordinate worrying that his master would run out of power. If Jamie considered them a burden, he wouldn't have strengthened them. Jean naively said, then couldn't you just make us stronger once and be done with it? It's nicer inside than I thought, but it's full of bones. Philip quickly covered his mouth before Jamie got angry, but it was too late. Right now, he just wanted to be done with Jean. The next morning, on the way to see everyone off to Afton, Jamie wore a soulless expression, not understanding what was happening. It turned out his father was lifting him up like a doll. He told Jamie to be careful and to protect his mother, sister, and friends. Jamie sulked. Do whatever you want. Just let me stand on my own 2 feet. I trust you. Come back safely. Agino hugged Jamie goodbye. In the carriage, Anna sighed. I wish we could ride in the same carriage as Rush. He suddenly volunteered to join the escort team. Jamie was listening to Jack O'Brien explain the route. They would take the safest route, but it would also be the most time-consuming. As for Sarah, she was sleeping soundly. She always fell asleep as soon as she got into a carriage. Rush would guard the rear while Jack led the way. Seeing Rush reminded Jamie of fear. He didn't know what she wanted to tell him. He had mentioned his glorious name, Diablo von Fear, but there was no reaction. It meant she either hadn't told the other gods or couldn't. After a good nap, Sarah stirred and woke up. The first thing she saw was a strange face. "Hello, you must be Sarah, right? I'm Ricky." Sarah was startled and began to cry, leaving Ricky at a loss. The peaceful carriage then shook with Jamie's shout. "What did you do to Sarah?" 2 days later, the rain was pouring down heavily. All 3 members of the Welltone family were fast asleep in the carriage. Ricky sulked as he looked outside. Just then, Rush rode up on his horse to check on them. Hearing the conversation, Jamie woke up. He had slept very soundly for about 2 hours. Ricky had been watching very carefully. "It's boring in the carriage, isn't it? Want me to tell you a fun story?" Rush asked. He wanted to tell a legend about the Mia Mountains. Jamie was about to say it was boring as hell, but Ricky's voice drowned his out. "Yes, please tell us, sir." This is a story from a long, long time ago, when dragons still soared in the sky. The elves still roamed the mountains. Back then, the Mia Range was actually a single mountain. On a day like any other, but more special because of the appearance of 2 dragons. An evil black dragon and a kind blue dragon named Mia. Mia had a human mage as a lover, but humans and dragons could not live together. Because the dragon clan could not accept it, they sent the black dragon to separate them. During the great battle, the majestic mountain was split into many areas, and canyons were created where the water rushed. Afterward, the black dragon was defeated, but Mia's lover also died. Mia saw her lover off and hid deep in the mountains, hoping one day he would return. That's when the rain started to fall endlessly, right? Anna spoke up, startling Ricky. Her eyes were closed, so he thought she was sleeping. That is why the poets call this place Dragon's Rain. Jamie was deep in thought. This story was real. Perhaps dragons were only legends of the past, so they called it a legend. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck with a loud bang, startling everyone. Sarah woke up and hugged her mother. She soothed her daughter. "It's okay, dear. Right, Jamie?" "Yes," Jamie said, but he felt something that made him uncomfortable. The carriage passed by dry trees. Lightning struck one, causing it to break and fall on the driver's seat. The carriage shook violently, causing the madam and Sarah to fall out. She cried out in fear for him to catch Sarah first. Jamie immediately used magic to create a rope to wrap around them. For a moment he panicked, but luckily he managed it. After bringing them back, Jamie immediately asked what happened. But this time, he was the one who fell, making his mother's heart stop again. "I'm fine, I'll use flight magic," Jamie said, but he couldn't use magic. This is Mana Burn, a higher-level spell used to neutralize mages. While falling, Jamie heard a voice. "Who are you? Are you a dragon?" Before he could understand, Jamie fell into the water. His mother was so worried she was about to jump in after him. Fortunately, a knight held her back. "Let go of me. My son is down there." Suddenly, a golden light enveloped her, helping her calm down. It was Ricky. He wanted to help, but accidentally missed his target. Sarah was in Anna's arms. After a series of incidents, she was exhausted and fainted. Rush immediately knelt down to talk to her. He would never say empty words like "Jamie is very talented, so he'll be fine." The current is indeed very dangerous, but once Jamie's magic is restored, he will be safe and sound. But Rush will still go down there to look for him. Jack immediately spoke up. "Even for you, the current is still very dangerous." But Rush had already made up his mind. He asked the madam for 3 hours to find Jamie. The madam knew that it was very risky even for a holy judicator, but she still wanted to ask Rush to bring Jamie back. "Yes, we will definitely return," Rush obeyed and left. Meanwhile, in a cave, Jamie groggily opened his eyes, only to realize he was bound by chains. He desperately wanted to know what was happening and who was targeting him. "Are you awake?" A woman with 2 horns on her head appeared. This was the person who had asked Jamie if he was a dragon. "Can't you tell just by looking at me?" Jamie had no idea what was wrong with her eyes. She could see that he wasn't a dragon, but it was very illogical. Suddenly, Jamie felt a very faint killing intent, but didn't know where it was coming from. The woman continued to speak. The reason she suspected Jamie was because how could a human who wasn't a dragon possess such potential? Your mana is exactly the same as how a dragon gathers mana. Jamie was also surprised that his original key technique was similar to a dragon's. Humans are very poor at absorbing mana due to their lack of wisdom and talent, so they can't even imitate us dragons, she said with her hands on her hips. It was the first time she had seen someone like Jamie, wondering if he was a half-elf. But even high-level elves couldn't compare to dragons. Jamie was getting annoyed. This woman kept talking nonsense while seeing him with her own eyes. Look at this brat. For someone who was just captured, you seem a bit too proud, don't you? The woman said. Jamie retorted, and what do you have to be proud of? Constantly mistaking people for dragons and kidnapping them to ask stupid questions. The sudden wind, the lightning that struck right next to the carriage, and that mana burn. It was all done by the bitch in front of him. Well, I guess you could think that. I just wanted to see for myself. She acted completely normal about having caused all that. Jamie was furious. Because of her, his mother and Sarah almost died, yet she was indifferent, without a hint of remorse. Suddenly, Jamie paused. Why was he so angry for the Welltone family? He had to be cold, so he stopped blaming her. Whatever. I guess it's reasonable for you to be curious about who I am. Take these things off, and we'll talk. No. The reason is because watching you squirm like this is more amusing. What the hell? Jamie yelled. Since when did even people he just met for the first time enjoy messing with him? Bullying others like this is exactly like the personality of the blue dragon Mia. Blue dragons are the gentlest of all dragon species. They are especially friendly to humans, and their feelings toward humans are just like humans' feelings for puppies and kittens. If you had met a notoriously violent red or black dragon, or a cunning green dragon, you'd be in their stomach by now. He didn't know if he was lucky, but the important question was why she kidnapped him when she thought he was a dragon. Well, to kill you. Of course, she was suddenly filled with killing intent, making Jamie flinch. But since he wasn't a dragon now, he would probably be let go. No, her immediate answer made his face darken. What's the reason? Let me make one up. Jamie had no idea what the hell she was talking about. If she used Jamie as material, she could obtain a high-level dragon soldier. Jamie frowned. If he became a dragon soldier, he would be much stronger. And if he had himself as a material, even he would become significantly stronger. Jamie quickly calmed his thoughts. He was at death's door. What the hell was he thinking about? By the way, sis, why do you want to kill a dragon? Jamie forced a friendly smile to get acquainted with her again, but it only irritated her. He boldly guessed the reason was because of that human lover of hers. She immediately dropped Jamie, but her attitude was not pleasant in the slightest. If you speak of him like that again, I will make you wish you were never born. Jamie knew she was Mia. I heard your tribe never accepted him, and you betrayed them to let him live. Mia gritted her teeth and summoned a water vortex that swept him away. How dare you speak, as if you know anything? Jamie was terrified but still tried to scream and persuade Mia. From the very beginning, she didn't want to harm him. Even though she could have brainwashed him, she didn't. You're so kind-hearted. It's hard to believe you're a dragon. Jamie shouted. Whether it was luck or his ancestors looking out for him, Jamie's words were exactly the same as what Mia's late lover used to say. She gritted her teeth and gave him one last chance, only for her lover's sake. Jamie spat out the water in his mouth. From now on, he had to be more careful with his words, because Mia was serious. You truly are a strange human, almost as strange as he was, Mia said. Jamie didn't understand who he was. According to Mia, he was the main character of the story she was about to tell. Meanwhile, Rush stood dazedly before the current. The relentless rain made the river rage even more. Where on earth is Jamie? 700 years ago, there was a man named Canon, a dark magician. Mia guessed Jamie was astonished, because who would think a species that favors white magic would fall for a human who uses dark magic? Canon only chose to use dark magic to seek the truth of this world. He was a true magician who had reached level 9. Jamie was shocked. But in the last 1,000 years, no human has ever reached level 9. I will tell you the reason right now, Mia replied. Before meeting Canon, Mia was already searching for the truth of this world. After they met, the two traveled through countless ruins and gradually fell in love. That was the happiest time of Mia's life, until the day the Dragon Lord issued that decree. Because of that decree, Kanan became an enemy of the dragon tribe. All dragons tried to eliminate him. The two of them fled, but eventually reached their limit. Mia found a ruin for Kanan to take shelter in. It had incredibly powerful barriers and only allowed one person to enter. Kanan hid inside, while Mia was exiled for 1,000 years. For a dragon, 1,000 years isn't a long time, but for a human, it's different. Kanan tried to save her after a few dozen years. After he found the truth of this world, he couldn't accept it, while Mia remained dormant through the passing years. For a human, that truth was incredibly hard to accept, so it's no wonder Kanan went mad. Kanan managed to save Mia, and after shaking off their pursuers, they hid in these vast mountains. And then, he died. Mia felt that such an end was for the best. She always convinced herself that he was now resting in peace. But the most despicable thing was that their tribe began to erase all traces of Kanan's existence. The books he left behind, even the people he had met, all disappeared. Hearing this, Jamie seemed to have partially guessed what truth the dragons wanted to erase. This place is where Kanan's existence still remains, the last place Mia must protect. That is why she is here. Jamie gradually understood the reason. No wonder Mia hadn't heard about his glorious past. The first thing he did after being reincarnated was to look for traces of his former self. But the name Diablo Von Fear was completely unknown, so clean it was as if someone had deliberately erased every trace. Kanan's existence was surely erased just like mine, at the hands of the Dragon Lord Graham and his dragons. Kanan was the level 9 magician who went so far as to learn dark magic to find the truth of this world. Just how much did he find out that he had to be erased like that? Is this place Kanan's grave? Jamie asked, using the excuse that he wanted to commemorate his life as a fellow magician. Mia led him to a large tree. At its base was Kanan's grave. Jamie realized that on top of the grave was his bracelet, named Extreme Resistance. This was one of the 3 great artifacts he had created to confront the 12 gods. An artifact that grants complete immunity to any disease or curse. Who would have known that after he disappeared, his belongings would go on an adventure across the world? So that was why Kanan sought the truth of the world. He had discovered the existence of Diablo Von Fear, him, after finding that bracelet. But if he asked for it, Mia would probably take his life, even though it was something Jamie had created. I've come, Kanan, Mia said respectfully, as if Kanan were a god. Jamie asked about the bracelet. She said it was Kanan's, that it held immense power and had saved his life countless times. Jamie saw that not a single speck of dust was on it. It even had cleaning and protection spells cast on it. Is that all that's left of Kanan? Jamie asked again. But this question immediately made Mia wary. Jamie had to feign humility. I mean no harm. I'm just curious. He was the one who sought the truth of this world, after all. So I was just wondering if he left any records behind. In fact, Kanan did have a diary, but Mia didn't want to show it to him. Jamie then told Mia to tell him. Surely she must have learned the truth about this world. You've crossed the line. That is not something a lowly human like you deserves to know. Mia's face darkened. But this is what Kanan risked his life to find. He may have failed at the last moment, but Mia is the one protecting that legacy. Instead of using those things as mementos of Kanan, he surely would have wanted humanity to inherit them. Mia was conflicted by Jamie's persuasive words, but she didn't need to keep anything to remember the one she loved, for she had already engraved everything about him in her heart. Just like how Jamie remembered Jane, it made him empathize a little with their fate of being separated by death. In the end, Mia still gave him the diary. She was certain that a human like Jamie couldn't break the seal on it. Mia was about to take him back, but Jamie wanted to see the diary. From now on, don't be surprised no matter what you see. After that, he broke the seal on the diary. Mia was surprised that he was a dark magician, and that his power was vastly different from the dark magic of ordinary humans. The diary recounted Kanan's journey, starting from the day he met Mia. When they first met, she called him filthy for being a dark magician, but somehow, the two ended up traveling together. Thanks to Mia's carefree nature, the journey was much more enjoyable, making him wonder if she was truly a dragon. Their adventure was very peaceful. Kanan rode on Mia's back to a place unreachable by humans, which he called the Land of Death. Then one day, The Dragon Lord ordered the dragon tribe to eliminate Kanon. He wasn't worried about himself, only for Mia, who had betrayed her own kind. He wanted to let her go, but he couldn't, because Kanon loved Mia. On another day, Kanon stood before the tombstone of an unknown person who had fought in some battle. The date written on the stone was 65,966 years ago. 2 years later, Kanon and Mia were still living on the run, settling in a remote mountain to avoid the dragon's eyes. The next place they visited was Gaiman in the southwest, the name written at the bottom of the tombstone, but it no longer existed. Mia sobbed as she read Kanon's diary, this being her first time reading it. As for Jamie, he thought he knew what tombstone Kanon was talking about. Before going into battle, to show his determination, he, or rather, Diablo von Fear, had carved words filled with despair for the past and hope for the future. 65,966 years before Kanon discovered it, and 700 years later Jamie was reincarnated, meaning he appeared exactly 66,666 years after his death. But Gaiman wasn't the place he wrote on the tombstone. In fact, no location was carved on it at all, which means someone had found his tombstone even before Kanon did. Those people are praiseworthy. Who would have thought Kanon could uncover the truth that the 12 gods had hidden so perfectly? Even though the truth is that humans from 60,000 years ago were reduced to being mere slaves of the 12 gods, there is no need for despair. Because Diablo has once again descended upon this earth, and the 12 gods will soon be annihilated. Humanity will be free once more. Mia, moved, hugged the diary. Inside, Kanon had confessed his love for her, even though he had never said it to her face, only calling her annoying and clingy. Didn't you say you still have your memories? I believe he is still alive in your heart. As long as you never, ever forget him, Jamie said gently. Mia chuckled. It turned out Jamie knew how to say such nice things, even though he was just a little kid. Jamie sighed. When will I ever get to scream to the world that I'm not a little brat? Mia wished she could turn back time, but of course, that was impossible. Jamie wished for the same, but he knew he had already gone too far to turn back. But you know, what the hell is that dark magic of yours? Mia couldn't help but ask immediately. It's just normal dark magic. Jamie tried to make an excuse, but failed, because Mia had tried to use dark magic to break the seal herself, and it hadn't worked. Jamie was startled. A dragon learning dark magic? Of course not, Mia said proudly. I brought someone who could use dark magic here, voluntarily. She recalled telling him, follow me if you don't want to die, and so he immediately complied. But no matter what they did, the diary didn't react at all until Jamie arrived. Mia hated to admit it, but the power Kanon was searching for was something that didn't exist in this world at all. It seemed Jamie couldn't avoid this anymore, so he decided to tell Mia the truth. That he is the one who is still fulfilling Kanon's will. How's that for the truth? Jamie told her of Diablo's legend, how he challenged the 12 gods alone, how he once had many comrades who were all either sacrificed or betrayed him. In the end, he lost to the 12 gods and was sealed for eternity, but he never gave up, not even for a second. And Jamie couldn't give up either. Kanon, and perhaps someone older than him, at some point long ago, carried on this will. It has been passed down to me, and to the generations that follow. Their will shall be carried on until the 12 gods are destroyed. Mia signaled for Jamie to follow her. She took the bracelet from Kanon's grave and gave it to Jamie, although it was originally his. Jamie was very happy to have his item back. The bracelet even glowed to greet its long-lost master. Not only that, Mia also promised to protect Jamie no matter what happened. In the past, she even betrayed her own clan, so there was nothing that could be difficult for Mia. Jamie happily thanked her. Getting a promise from a real dragon was a fantastic outcome. Now get lost. Mia immediately kicked Jamie out. As for her, she continued to stand guard here next to Kanon. His dream was still being carried on. Outside, Rush stood from the time it was pouring rain until the rain stopped and the clouds cleared. Jamie glided through the air. Hey, what are you doing? When they returned, his mother hugged Linmi as if they hadn't seen each other for years. Ricky and his sister were also very moved and happy to see him back. The Fear Knights bowed their heads to thank Rush, promising to never forget this debt. Rush felt the pressure. In reality, he hadn't done anything but was being praised like a hero, so it was quite embarrassing. In the kingdom of Zelda, in the territory of Peel Nestman, in a school, a girl screamed as the white rat jumped from her hand. What the hell are you doing? Why can't you even hold it properly? Stupid Vina. The classmates cursed her while stopping the rat, so it wouldn't bite the medicine. In the end, Vina had to stay behind to clean the classroom, with no idea when she would be finished. I wonder when that retard will finally get lost. Two people were gossiping about Vina right in front of her. It was only because the headmaster was protecting her that they didn't dare use violence on Vina, instead bullying her by treating her like an errand girl. Someone threw Vina a piece of paper and told her to bring the things on the list. Vina trembled as she complied, leaving to the sound of the bully's satisfied laughter. Tears streamed down her face. Why on earth had she ended up in this situation? At Count Pierre's mansion, he held a banquet to entertain the Welltone family and everyone else. The three siblings, sharing the same fate, drooled before the lavish spread of food. Anna couldn't see it, but she could smell the delicious aroma. The lady expressed her gratitude for Count Pierre's hospitality, and the meal passed pleasantly. That night, Jamie went for a stroll around town again. Seeing nothing suspicious, he thought about returning to his cozy bed. By now, Ricky probably wouldn't be following him like a tail anymore. Black appeared, chirping beep beep. Jamie thought it seemed like it wanted to play all night long. He accidentally revealed the bracelet, causing two cloaked figures behind him to become greedy. Such an incredible item was in the hands of a child, so they guessed Jamie was a noble with rich parents who would give him such a precious item. You think the headmaster will like it? He might even reward us handsomely. And so, the two began their journey down the path to hell. Along the way, Black kept chirping. Jamie realized the problem wasn't that it wanted to go party, but that two little mice were tailing them. Jamie didn't know what they were planning, but since he was bored, having some toys to play with was a good idea. Jamie teleported to a rooftop, causing them to lose sight of him. To add to the drama, he deliberately made a noise in a street corner to attract their attention. And now, he just needed to wait for the prey to fall into the trap and enjoy the meal. Excuse me, a voice called out as a strange, magical Doraemon-like portal pulled Jamie inside. This masterpiece was created by Vina. She was pushed 3 meters away. Jamie was furious that someone dared to interfere with his game. Boy or girl, it didn't matter. What mattered was that he had to kill her right now. Wait, please listen to me, Vina begged, but Jamie didn't want to listen. The attack was aimed at her and revealed Vina's dark magic, so Jamie stopped his attack. He decided to ask her purpose for bringing him here, only out of consideration for the fact that she used the dark magic he created. You're so cruel. I just wanted to help. Vina sobbed. She was afraid the dark magic of those two men would get Jamie killed. Jamie froze. Why was he surrounded by dark mages? Vina continued to lament her misfortune. Her good deed was being repaid with punishment. She had saved Jamie's life only to receive pain in return. Was it so hard to be a good person? Why did everyone hate her so much? I get it. So be quiet for a bit, Jamie said with a sigh. Vina pulled a rope from somewhere. A cruel world that won't accept me. It's better if I leave this life. What the hell? After a while, Jamie understood. The portal from before was the school's gate. Vina felt sorry for Jamie because he was just a kid, but now she wondered if he was really a child. Jamie found it ridiculous. She herself was a dark mage. Although it was just speculation, she must have played a large part in cruel experiments like these. But it seemed Jamie had hit the nail on the head with Vina. It wasn't simply about wanting to save him. Jamie felt it was more like she was demanding he see her as someone on the side of justice. Don't make excuses. You're trash, no different from them. Jamie didn't let her say another meaningless word. Vina didn't want to live in torment. She was in pain every time her hands were stained with blood, her chest heavy and hard to breathe. Jamie nodded and left. He didn't want to be too curious. Vina also stood up to leave, but she bumped into an invisible wall, which seemed to be beyond her expectations. Jamie smirked. A new game had suddenly appeared, so how could he possibly pass it up? Meanwhile, Headmaster Gab was walking around the school looking for Vina, but his face didn't look like that of a good character. After hearing Vina's story, Jamie didn't expect that she had been loyal to this school for 10 years. If that's the case, then there's nothing more he can do to help. Your tears fall, the game is over. Vina was astonished to see that his black mana had no special symbols of dark magic, nor did it have the toxic feeling that disrupts life. It could be said to be extremely pure. Jamie was penetrating her mind when suddenly, Vina woke up and grabbed his hand. Jamie immediately pulled his hand away in disgust. No wonder she always made others feel uncomfortable. Please take me as your disciple. The words that spewed from Vina's mouth made Jamie unable to understand what was going on in her head. Of course, the answer was hell no. Just a moment ago she was only holding his hand, but now Vina was hugging Jamie. She cried about her hardships, how her parents died 10 years ago, forcing her to become a dark mage, the incredibly cruel experiments sacrificing living people, and how her companions condemned her for being pathetic, but even so, Vina couldn't run away. Vina wanted to end it all, even though it sounded like something a hypocrite would say. After listening, Jamie still didn't understand what the hell that had to do with becoming his disciple. Your black mana. It's not something created by sacrificing lives, and I need that power. So this was her goal. Jamie found it laughable when she said it wasn't created by sacrificing lives. Sometimes, such pure darkness can nurture someone's existence. You're wrong. And more importantly, I don't want to. Jamie put her to sleep. He returned to the street. The word disciple reminded him of his time as Diablo. He had also taken in disciples and raised them, only for them to betray him. According to Vina's memory, there were over 20 members at her school, and Headmaster Gab was a master of curses. It seemed something had happened while Jamie was away. Of course, he needed to go see what it was. A head floated in a water tank with a voice saying, "Please, can someone save me?" How interesting. Normally, they would beg to die. Does reversing the curse change her language? The two cloaked figures were students of this school. They conducted inhuman experiments on both people and animals. How audacious of them to hide in an academy to conduct these dark experiments. Now Jamie understood. It had been so long since dark magic had disappeared, and he himself had sacrificed countless lives to stand before the 12 gods, so he had no right to judge them. However, what was the reason for the formation of dark magic? He didn't care how it was performed. As long as he could destroy the gods, Jamie had to cast aside his humanity and bear all sins. Now, he had to go and collect the seeds he had sown. If they grew up and became monsters, then he had to be the one to harvest them. Meanwhile, Vina was still worried about Jamie, who had suddenly disappeared, but she should have been more worried about herself, because that witch Hela had appeared to bully Vina. She grabbed Vina by the hair because Vina dared to run away while working for her. So Hela dragged Vina to a secluded place to take care of business. She had to stomp on lowly bugs like Vina at least once so she would know what it feels like. Let the festival begin, flame of pain. Vina knelt down and begged to be spared this time. But of course, there was no chance of that. Just then, Jamie returned, looking at her with a judgmental gaze. Are you really scared of people like this? Vina was about to make an excuse, but was silenced by Jamie's glare. He ordered her to stand up. Do you prefer sleeping on the ground or in a bed? Stop groveling there. I don't know who the hell you are, but you sure as hell don't have a brain. Seeing someone else appear for her entertainment, Hela decided to take care of both of them. Jamie told Vina to decide for herself, to live or to die. Standing at this threshold, Vina's true nature awakened. For a long time, she had not wanted to get along with people like this. Hela's jaw dropped at Vina's action and power. Even Vina herself was surprised by her own actions. I don't know what you just did, but I'm sure you're prepared for the consequences of defying me. Hela wasn't giving up here. Jamie blew a puff of air, and the flame on her hand was extinguished. He looked at Vina encouragingly. The first step is the hardest, but the second step won't be so difficult. Hela only now realized that the Jamie standing before her was not to be trifled with, but by then it was too late. At that moment, in his room, Headmaster Gab jumped up in joyful ecstasy. Vina had finally awakened as a Valkyrie. The old man had set up various situations to control her, fearing her personality would prevent her from ever awakening. But now, he no longer needed to tire himself out in this corner of the world. It was time to find Vina and devour her Valkyrie power. Meanwhile, Vina was still scared as she stood up to confront the bullies. Jamie couldn't understand how someone as timid as her could be a Wajii, a high-ranking angel known as a warrior angel, with enough immense power to wage war against the 12 gods. Although they failed, they were fortunate enough to avoid extinction and hid themselves in places beyond the sight of the 12 gods. Vena's personality must have been suppressed by old Gab for a long time, because basically, the Wakizashi are a belligerent race that hates bowing to others. They probably wanted to control her more easily after she awakened. Suddenly, a red alert sounded. Vena thought they were looking for Jamie, but they weren't. This time, the announcement was to capture Vena by any means necessary. Vena was bewildered as students and professors began to hunt her down. Now what will she do? Vena shouted, "I'm not the same person I used to be." Seeing that she had regained a bit of a Valkyrie's confidence, Jamie teleported to where the students were gathered. There was no need to search for them, because it was now Vena's time to shine. A group surrounded her, authoritatively ordering Vena to come over to them. Jamie knew they had all been brainwashed, so he decided to send a few of them to the afterlife. Right now, they had no free will. Perhaps they were slaves to this school from the very beginning. Now Vena realized that everything they had done to her was based on the will of Headmaster Gab. Seeing that Vena wasn't obeying, the students began to chant spells, but Jamie's counterspell returned everything they dished out. He signaled for Vena to come to her senses, but Vena was furious. All this time, she had endured all of this without knowing a thing. Jamie, however, saw that her true nature was gradually revealing itself. If that's the case, then go forward and fight for your revenge. Vena was pushed into the circle of students, crying her eyes out. All this time, she had never known the meaning of the word fight. But as soon as she faced danger, her body moved on its own. Even Vena herself couldn't believe it. When an attacker came from behind, Vena grabbed his arm and threw him like a sandbag. Surprised for the second time, she wondered when she had gotten as strong as an ox. The students weren't afraid. Even if she was stronger or more agile, they still saw her as trash. Vena jumped up and crushed the guy with her foot. It felt as if this body was no longer hers. Jamie saw that the remaining group seemed to realize the skill gap, so there was no need to fight anymore. It wasn't just here that had these kinds of newbies, but anyway, he had promised to take care of them all. Jamie summoned graves. It had finished marking all the newbies, so now it was time for Jamie's harvest. He cast Corpse Explosion. In an instant, the rest of them were sent packing. If Head waited for Vena to finish them, it would have taken until tomorrow. What is this? All my children are dead. Old Gab only appeared at this very moment. He saw Jamie's skill hidden within the shell of a little boy and boldly guessed that he had a chronic illness. So what if I do? I see, so it's that kind of setup. The old man's words irritated Jamie. Old Gab saw how incredibly skilled he was and wanted to bring him to his side. If they succeeded, they could swallow an entire nation. Jamie asked for his specific method. Old Gab laughed. Aren't you greedy? We haven't even agreed to cooperate yet. Annoyed, Jamie had no choice but to agree. It's just one nation. Why is this guy being so difficult? Vena then asked why he had ordered everyone to capture her, but he only paid attention to the amount of life force she possessed. As for the reason he had her captured, it was so that after Vienna awakened, he could devour her whole. When he first took Vienna in, he went through so much trouble to erase her true personality, to make her awaken in the state he desired. He even created this entire academy just for Vienna. Vena remembered that every time she was bullied, old Gab would be there to comfort her, but he never once stopped them. When you lost your true nature, trembling in fear at the things that happened here, I was so delighted. He rejoiced as his plan succeeded. Now she had awakened with the cruelty he had instilled in her over the past decade. Suddenly, a wave of dark power enveloped Vienna, causing her to faint. The perpetrator was none other than Jamie. He let her hear everything before purging the evil within Vienna. Impossible, something like that can't be purged so easily, he said, his face pale. But for Jamie, it was easier than eating porridge. The old man probably thought it was impossible because, at his age, he was still just a piece of trash who couldn't even reach the 7th class. You bastard! Old Gab shouted angrily. With his gray hair, he was being humiliated by someone young enough to be his grandson. The 7th class was his secret sore spot. If anyone poked at this pain, he would kill them in the most brutal and violent ways. Just like his alias, the Master of Curses, it could be said he had reached the pinnacle of slandering others. But Gab could never break through the wall to the 6th class, so this was a humiliation to his 60 years of life. I will make you writhe in agony forever. Old Gab used his ultimate move, Despairing Dark Knight, summoning a burning hydra serpent to coil around Jamie's body. In his subconscious, a subordinate whose body had been twisted by 7,749 experiments still wanted him to provide more bodies for continued experimentation. Jamie thought the old man was pretty tough. His head must have been hurting like it was split into pieces, but old Gab still acted nonchalantly. It's not for nothing that people call him a master of curses. But you still shouldn't have been so careless. Jamie plunged the old man into a pitch-black space. He laughed like a psychopath. How interesting. Who would have thought I'd be hit with mental magic? But he seemed unaffected and even waited to see if Jamie had any stronger moves. He directly interfered with his own brain to counter Jamie's magic, but Jamie thought it was too late. Right now, the old man was in his subconscious, and he would attack his physical body. This has gone too far. Suddenly, the old man opened his mouth, and Jamie's attack was reflected back through him. This was old Gab's ultimate technique, curse reflection, a rather difficult dark magic that he was very confident in having learned. Watching Jamie fall into the abyss he himself had created satisfied the old man. But first, he needed to destroy his mind. From now on, Jamie will be forever trapped in a single moment. When 1 second becomes 10, 100, or 1,000 seconds, a person will experience the phenomenon of delulu, a state where one's consciousness rejects everything, a condition that can never end. Even if it's just 1 second, can Jamie withstand that 1 second playing out tens of thousands of times? Time is my ultimate curse. Old Gab saw victory right before his eyes. But Jamie calmly said, "So what?" He reached out and grabbed the old man's head, startling him. "These cheap tricks are useless against me. Now, they'll blow your old dog brain to bits." Old Gab was sent flying 8 meters away. Jamie hoped he was strong enough to withstand the dozens of curses about to be cast on his old body. After being hit by dozens of irresistible curses, old Gab lay on the ground, dying. He should have been the winner. If their powers were equal, the outcome would depend on equipment. Thanks to his extreme resistance ring, Jamie was immune to all sorts of curses. The item was like a game hack, making old Gab unable to believe it existed, but this world itself was already absurd, so he didn't need to be so surprised. "Damn it, I am the king of the world." Old Gab breathed out words that angered Jamie. He wouldn't let the old man die peacefully as he thought. It would be too much of a waste for such a talented individual not to become Jamie's subordinate. Now, he would send the old man to the gates of trial, to be a sinner for all eternity. An existence that is neither living nor dead. Immortality would prevent him from dying completely, and of course, he would have to run errands for Jamie. The bitter old Gab watched as his soul was pulled in. Having lost, and now being forced to become a servant, where could he hide his shame? All he wanted now was to rest in eternal peace. But Jamie said, "Not a chance." From now on, his name would be Nero. Vina groggily woke up. The first person she looked for was the headmaster. But now, he was in a completely different position, Jamie's slave. Jamie asked Vina how she was doing. The people who had made her life a living hell for the past 10 years had all paid the price. But Vienna didn't know either. As her life turned a new page, her mind felt empty. There was one thing Vienna was determined to do, become Jamie's disciple, but he still flatly refused. Vina is a Wajii, a fairy race that existed in the very distant past, extremely brave and never backing down, always doing their best to prove they were right. In the end, they failed and became a race that bears all misfortune. Jamie didn't know how their descendants survived to this day, but it's possible that she is the last Valkyrie. After listening for a while, Vina still didn't understand what any of that had to do with Jamie not accepting her as a disciple. What Jamie really meant was that he didn't know a single thing about Valkyrie magic, so there was no reason to take her in. On the way, Anna and Sarah were doting on the chubby squirrel in front of them. The squirrel pleaded with Jamie for help, but his hands were tied. Fortunately, he knew transformation magic, which was how he could bring Vina along. The rest, she'd have to handle herself. Finally, the group arrived at Jamie's maternal grandparents' home. It had been 9 years since his mother's last visit. "I'm so sorry, father. This unworthy daughter has finally come to see you," she said, sniffling. The Marquis comforted his daughter. It was a very sentimental reunion. Jamie stood at a distance, forcing a smile. He still didn't know what emotions were. Even after being reincarnated, he still felt uncomfortable with himself. In that endless abyss, he had longed for nothing but revenge. He always felt that emotions were unnecessary because they drove people mad. Suddenly, Sarah shouted, "Mommy, don't cry. Grandpa is a bad person. He made Mommy cry." The lady helplessly tried to explain and clear her father's name, but the little girl already had a bad impression. "I hate Grandpa." Jamie also didn't know what to do about the little girl's reaction. He truly didn't understand human emotions. Putting that aside, Jamie stepped forward to greet his grandfather. "I've been wanting to meet you." Jamie had to force a smile and a sweet voice. "I've really wanted to meet you too, Grandpa." His grandfather was very happy that he didn't hate him like Sarah. He immediately hugged him tightly. "That's right, my grandson. I'm so happy to see you." "Ah yes, me too," Jamie tried to answer despite nearly suffocating. As expected of the Vale family, they all have a penchant for skinship. That night, his grandfather talked to the lady about Jamie. Although he was only a fourth-class mage, he could still foresee a part of the boy's power. Sooner or later, this entire kingdom will have its eyes on Jamie. The lady sighed. She understood her father's meaning. A tall tree catches a lot of wind. Although Count and Countess Welltone could block them now, there would come a day when they could no longer protect Jamie. That's why his grandfather prepared something for him. While it wasn't a perfect shield, it wasn't useless either. The lady was also very happy that she could still protect her son, but she was somewhat worried about her husband, the Count. He had made an enemy of the Church of Janus. The Marquis knew this matter wouldn't pass quietly. Those people are incredibly twisted monsters. Because of those bastards, their Church of Fear is in a very troublesome situation. Perhaps that Janus bunch is even planning to completely eliminate their Church of Fear. Suddenly, the door flew open, interrupting their conversation. Meanwhile, in his room, Jamie was going crazy because he couldn't discipline Vina, who was sleeping soundly on his bed in her human form. Jamie had to use magic to wake this sleepyhead up, saying irritably, "Didn't I tell you not to transform back?" Vina felt aggrieved. She had lived for over a dozen years, but this was her first time living as a mouse. Jamie's face darkened as he retorted, "What would you do if you were caught?" In her mind, Vina pictured a bunch of terrible scenarios where Jamie didn't care if she lived or died, and she would become a fragrant roasted mouse. Just thinking about it made the future seem bleak. Vina sorrowfully turned back into a mouse. Afterwards, Jamie sat examining a necklace, deep in thought, but Vina kept pestering him with questions about it, driving him nuts. The result was the mouse Vina getting a flick on the head. She said resentfully, "Do you know you're killing my brain cells?" Jamie gave her a sidelong glance. "You have brain cells to kill?" Black was even more curious about this than she was. It was definitely an artifact, but he didn't know what it did. Suddenly, Jamie sensed an intense killing intent emanating from where his mother was. Jamie immediately opened the door and rushed to find her. But his turtle-like speed made him extremely anxious, so he accelerated his body, flying like an arrow. Jamie quickly found the source of the killing intent, but he knew he couldn't defeat him. If that was the case, the only option was to escape. Jamie rushed into attack. Although panicked, he knew he couldn't use dark magic in front of his family. The move he used was high-voltage holy light, a chance to create an illusion so he and his mother could escape. What an adorable little trick. A large hand grabbed Jamie by the collar, lifting him up like a kitten. He gnashed his teeth resentfully. "Let me go." Right now, survival was paramount. Even if his dark magic was exposed, he would save his mother. "Jamie," his mother's voice rang out, leaving Jamie bewildered. But his grandfather and mother were even more bewildered when he suddenly rushed in to attack. After sitting down and talking, the Marquis laughed, proud to have a grandson who was both talented and loved his parents. Meanwhile, his mother was losing face because of her troublemaker son, who had suddenly attacked someone he didn't even know. "I've been too soft on you, haven't I?" She scolded him while spanking his bottom. "That's enough, Servalt. It's my fault things turned out this way," the man spoke up. She didn't understand and asked, "What are you talking about, Sir Bailey?" Jamie was feeling wronged by the injustice. Luckily, Bailey cleared his name, admitting his intention was to test Jamie. Bailey Onic, the Tempest Sword Master, one of the 5 sword masters of the Guardian Kingdom. The lady still didn't quite understand Bailey's intentions, so he bluntly stated that he had intentionally leaked a little killing intent towards Jamie. She was furious and wanted to curse right in the face of the man who bullied her son. But as a lady, she had to restrain herself. The Marquis signaled for his daughter to cool down, adding that Bailey was just conducting a small test. But to the lady, her child was everything. She warned him that if he dared to do it again, she wouldn't show him any mercy. "I'm very sorry," Bailey said sorrowfully. As for the lady, she apologized to Jamie for wrongly blaming her precious son. He was also very confused about how to react in this situation. Bailey had detected him and revealed his presence perfectly, an existence that wasn't swayed at all by the holy light. In short, he was strong. He pretended to be curious and asked about Bailey's identity as a sword master. The Marquis then introduced him as the one with the title Tempest Sword Master. There are 5 sword masters in the William Kingdom. Although the 5 have never fought each other, making it hard to rank them, the King's Sword, known as Tari's the Shield, is known to be the strongest sword master. Next is Count Weltone, your father, and right below him is Baileyonic. Jamie respectfully greeted Bailey and introduced himself. Bailey frowned slightly. "Is that all?" The lady slammed the table in anger. "What more do you want?" Bailey calmly told Jamie to learn the sword. The sword was something Jamie had never considered, so he was surprised. Bailey believed that besides magic, Jamie could also achieve outstanding accomplishments in swordsmanship, having inherited the blood of his father, the second best in the kingdom. Hearing what the great sword master, Billy, said, the Marquis was somewhat convinced, but he had never heard of Jamie's talent in magic. Billy had also heard a little something, that Jamie could become a 9th-class mage, that he could get stronger just by breathing. And the source of this rumor was none other than Old Man Lim. But swordsmanship is different. It's something that's very difficult to master if you miss the right opportunity. Jamie also wanted to learn swordsmanship, but right now, restoring his magic was his #1 priority. Thus, Jamie had to refuse Bailey's offer. Bailey didn't object or force him to learn. The conversation simply ended there. Jamie took a walk in the large, well-tended garden of the Vale family, partly to heal after his encounter with Vina. He wished the transformation magic could make her only squeak like a mouse instead of speaking human language. Recalling his confrontation with Bailey, it felt like he was facing a towering, immovable wall. He was very lucky to have regained his life force and the seed of life, and to have found a perfect vessel, but it still wasn't enough. There would be times when he would be slowed down. The 7th class is the level from which one is called a great mage. This realm cannot be reached just by training one's skills. When the mana core created by a mage reaches its limit, the gate to becoming a great mage will open, and it is called magic approval. If Jamie did things as he did in his past life, it would be easy, but he would never be able to defeat his enemies by using the same failed methods of the past. Thanks to that person, he was able to realize this. Jamie still had to try much harder. He was curious about what relationship Bailey had with his mother, with that sorrowful, as if lovesick, expression. While he was lost in thought, a water monster leaped out of the lake, startling Jamie. He immediately put up a shield. Jamie hated being disturbed while deep in thought, so this monster was out of luck. But before Jamie could even act, a figure shot forward like an arrow so fast he couldn't see them clearly. A figure in white flew towards the water monster and defeated it in a single blow. After finishing, the man rested his sword on his shoulder and cordially asked Jamie, saying he heard the Weltone nobles were coming but was delayed by some deadline, so they were only meeting now. In contrast to his smile, Jamie was extremely wary. It made sense, since he dealt with that giant monster in just a few seconds. Though not as skilled as Bailey, he was certainly no less powerful. The person sheathed his sword and introduced himself. "I am Sable, the butler of the Marquis of Vala's household." Jamie was completely shocked. Just a butler was this strong? His grandfather was too awesome. Seeing Jamie's defensive posture, Sable explained, "A long time ago, I carelessly made a binding oath to the Marquis, which is why I have to work as a servant now." Sable also knew Jamie's name and identity. As the butler, he had to be familiar with all the key figures. Jamie asked about the monster that had suddenly appeared in the Marquis Lake. Sable also found it difficult to explain to him. In short, it was Jamie's grandfather's strange hobby. What the hell? Jamie couldn't believe that his gentle-looking grandfather had such a strange hobby on the inside. A while later, Sable went to the Marquis to report on his work. He had found a group suspected of being demons, but unfortunately, he had lost their trail. The Marquis sighed. Who would have thought the Demon King's subordinates would appear? Rumors about demons had also begun to spread in the neighboring territories. However, the only place where massacres were occurring was Afton. The Marquis realized this must be real, and those demons had returned for revenge. About 50 years ago, the Marquis' father had defeated the Demon King, making them pay a heavy price by wiping out their entire clan. This time, when they return, they will surely be erased from this world once again, and by the hands of the Vale family. Sable pledged to await any order from the Marquis, but for today, the Marquis only made that declaration. Now, everyone could go home. Before leaving, Sable recounted his meeting with Jamie. The Marquis wondered how the two had a chance to meet so late at night. Sable told him about how Jamie was attacked by the monster near the pond's edge. Since the Marquis himself had brought the monster there, he felt extremely guilty. So, the next morning, upon learning of the incident, Jamie's mother immediately barged into his room to ask about him. Jamie, who was sleeping soundly, was woken up by her in a very novel way. He glanced behind her and saw his grandfather and the butler, so he guessed Sable must have told them. Although he was saved in time, the lady was still extremely worried. She promised to punish Jamie if he ever dared to wander outside at night again. Yes, he replied sleepily, which annoyed his mother. His grandfather spoke up and apologized for forgetting to block off that area, which caused Jamie to wander off. The lady yelled at her own father. "Are you still playing those ocean monster hunting games? Didn't Mom and I repeatedly tell you it's dangerous?" The Marquis quickly called Sable over to greet them as a distraction. The lady was very grateful to him for saving her precious little son's life. Sable lightly touched the lad's hand to show his respect. He thought that even if he hadn't appeared, Jamie could have defeated the water monster himself. Through their greeting, Jamie saw that he was a person who was careful and adhered strongly to etiquette, and was quick-witted, completely different from yesterday. "Jamie, I'm not done talking yet." The lady would probably hold this grudge until old age just to scold him. Luckily, his grandfather came to his rescue. That afternoon, Jamie finally managed to escape and went out into the streets in disguise. He asked a passerby for directions to the Church of Fear. She hesitantly pointed in some direction and then left immediately, leaving Jamie confused. Was it east or west? Suddenly, there was a shout from the crowd. "Murder! It's a demon!" Jamie pushed through the crowd to see what was happening. On the ground was the corpse of a guard with a hole where his heart should be. It seemed this wasn't the first heartless corpse, so people went to report it to the Marquis. Hearts are often used in demon summoning rituals, so the townspeople all assumed this was the work of demons. No wonder the adults were so restless. They probably thought he didn't notice anything, but Sable's gaze made Jamie feel a pang of guilt. Their target must be revenge for the Portsmouth Maw incident, or more precisely, they were targeting the Vale family. Jamie sighed. This meant the Church of Fear was also on high alert. No wonder he hadn't received any news from those 3 chatterboxes. In the end, he had to go and do it himself. Jamie turned invisible and flew to the Church of Fear. He stood on a treetop observing, and suddenly got goosebumps when he saw the Archbishop, who was emitting an astonishing divine power. Rush was saying something to the Archbishop, but Jamie couldn't hear. Suddenly, the Archbishop looked up at the treetop where Jamie was standing, but saw nothing. He told Rush it seemed to be just a squirrel. Rush said the Marquis was waiting, so they needed to leave immediately. It had been a long time since the Archbishop had seen the madam. Jamie hid behind the treetop, his heart pounding. How could an old man's intuition be so sharp? Fortunately, he was now heading to the Marquis' house, so Jamie could sneak inside. In the prayer room, Ricky and Anna were chanting. Suddenly, Ricky burst out laughing, leaving Anna wondering what was wrong with her brother. Ricky stood up and told Anna to wait for a moment because he had to go out to meet a friend, who was Jamie. After sneaking in, Jamie sensed something powerful emanating from the sanctuary. In that case, he had to turn invisible to go inside. Suddenly, a hand touched him, startling Jamie. He immediately swatted the hand away with a cold attitude. Just as he was about to make someone's brain explode, he saw Ricky's goofy face. Ricky was trying to scare Jamie, but failed. But in reality, Jamie had been quite startled. Just as he was winding up to curse Ricky out, Ricky immediately cut him off. Ricky guessed that Jamie couldn't be seen by others, so he wanted to take him to a more private place. Who would have thought that Ricky's more private place was the very Archbishop's office that Jamie was avoiding? More importantly, how could Ricky appear and sneak up behind him without revealing any presence at all? What? You didn't come here because you missed me? Ricky's irrelevant question annoyed Jamie. Ricky then explained that this place was under the management of the goddess Fear. Although he hadn't reached the ultimate power of an apostle yet, he was gradually achieving it in this place. In other words, Ricky was slowly assimilating with this place. Jamie guessed that he had probably become omniscient and omnipotent within this church, and he couldn't sense any trace of undead power from Ricky. It was unexpected that his apostle power was so overwhelmingly strong. Ricky was about to look for Jamie to deliver a message from the goddess, but since he came on his own, Ricky would connect him to Fear right away. Before Jamie could prepare himself, a stream of light burst from Ricky, his eyes filled with holy power, completely different from when he first awakened. Even his clothes had somehow changed, and he looked incredibly cool. Jamie could feel a part of Fear's presence here. Through Ricky, Fear announced that a source of dark energy was rising, starting in a dark forest. It needed to be stopped before it started to spread and destroy her domain in this place. Before Jamie could understand what it had to do with him, Fear asked him to go to that forest to resolve everything, hoping that he wouldn't suffer any losses. After speaking, Fear left, leaving Ricky with a worn-out body. Jamie still couldn't process the situation. How could she just say whatever she wanted and leave without letting anyone ask questions? On behalf of Fear, Ricky apologized, explaining that she wasn't very strong right now. When she was forced to descend last time, it put much more pressure on the goddess than expected. Anyway, Jamie didn't understand why Fear had to ask for his help. She had tons of devout followers willing to sacrifice their lives for her. Ricky said that Jamie was the only one who could do this. Fear said that he was the successor of that person, so he would understand. Other than that, there was nothing else. Fear was probably resting and recovering. How selfish, Jamie said, and left immediately, before the Archbishop returned and escorted him back to the Marquis' house. Ricky watched him come and go in an instant, hoping the gods would protect him. Jamie returned home with a confident smile, thinking he hadn't been discovered, but the ending wasn't as had dreamed. Sable casually appeared behind him. The weather is lovely today, isn't it? It seems you just got back from somewhere. Jamie was caught red-handed. He made the excuse that he had just gone out for a walk, but the atmosphere became awkward, so he then claimed he wasn't feeling well. Sable said that an important guest was visiting today, the Archbishop of the Church of Fear, named Syria. Jamie already knew this, but he still had to pretend to be surprised. Sable continued, saying that his mother was searching the entire mansion for him. Jamie panicked. When will I finally outgrow this age of being supervised? Body, please grow up faster. Jamie changed the subject and asked about Bailey, but Sable didn't know his whereabouts either. He was a large man but came and went like the wind. Before leaving, Sable reminded Jamie not to be too interested in Bailey. The reason was that he only wanted what was best for him. Then he wished Jamie a good rest. Oh right. If you're planning to go for a walk, don't go to the Mirroring Forest. That place is very dangerous, Sable said with a meaningful smile. That night in a wild forest, a strange object was being tended to by two figures in black cloaks. Just a little longer, kid. You'll soon escape that suffocating place. The day you awaken will be the day we complete our mission. The next day, at the tea table with his mother and sister, Jamie boldly asked his mother about her relationship with Bailey. Seeing his mother's silence, he thought he wasn't allowed to know, but she shook her head. It's not like that. Where should I start? I met him when I was 7. Back then, Bailey's father brought him to the Marquis' house for a visit because they were acquaintances. He was worried he couldn't find a good enough instructor for Bailey because all he knew was how to swing a sword. So, Marquis Vale helped them find an instructor for Bailey. Meanwhile, Seal was happy to have an older playmate and invited Bailey to the garden to catch butterflies. With his father's permission, Bailey dared to go with her. Seal jumped onto an apple tree, showing off her prize to Bailey. But in her excitement, she slipped. Bailey panicked and ran over, but they both ended up tumbling to the ground. Even so, Seal found it very fun and wanted to play again, but Bailey was already terrified. After returning and changing clothes, the two enjoyed the fruits of their labor. Seal pulled out another pile of apples from somewhere, making Bailey sigh in exasperation. Then, Seal decided she would learn swordsmanship, with Bailey as her teacher. Bailey sighed, knowing this day would eventually come. But in reality, Seal had no talent for it at all. 3 years later, Bailey's father got involved in the gold mine incident, despite being warned by the Marquis many times. But he didn't know what else to do, as he couldn't just stand by and watch his family's honor be tarnished. However, the family head later took his own life, leaving Bailey alone as the family completely collapsed. The Marquis told him to stay at their home. Bailey told Seal he was fine, but he was clearly not. In the following years, Bailey immersed himself in swordsmanship for revenge, to the point where he didn't realize when he had started neglecting Seal. Many years later, when Seal came of age and made her debut, many men had their eyes on her. Each time, Bailey found it very irritating. He dealt with everyone who talked to Seal. After Seal witnessed that side of him, she was extremely disappointed that the brother she once knew was gone. One day, Agino Welltone came to the Marquis' house to seek advice as a representative of his family. Seal was also present to receive Agino. From that moment, he fell for her smile, which was like the sun shining down on the world. The Marquis praised Agino as a genius swordsman who could even become the next sword master, but Agino humbly declined the compliment. Looking over at Seal, who just sat there and smiled, Agino's defensive shield was completely shattered. In the following days, Agino became the target of Bailey's jealousy, to the point where he didn't even want to talk to him anymore. "Don't you like me too? All this time, I've only ever had eyes for you," Bailey said in disappointment. But Seal could no longer see the image of the person she once considered a brother. Bailey never listened to her. He only tried to control her. Faced with Seal's blunt attitude, Bailey couldn't contain his anger and grabbed her to question her. A hand grabbed Bailey's arm. Agino appeared just in time with an equally angry expression. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Get lost," Bailey shouted back. But Agino didn't move. He pulled Bailey's hand that was tightly gripping Seal and demanded that Bailey apologize to her immediately. But Bailey didn't apologize. Instead, he challenged Agino to a duel. Although it was unexpected, Agino agreed. Afterward, Seal told the Marquis everything and asked her father to stop them, but he didn't know what to do. From the beginning, he had planned to marry her off to Bailey. "I don't agree," Seal said bluntly. In her eyes, Bailey these past years was either a demon who only knew how to swing a sword or someone who just wanted to control her, checking if she was meeting other men. "It's all because he loves you," the Marquis explained, but to Seal, that wasn't love. Her tears fell because the gentle and caring brother Bailey of the past was no more. Suddenly, the Marquis asked Seal about Count Welltone, but she didn't quite understand his meaning. Then, the Marquis let her leave. As for himself, he was lost in thought. He had to send an apology to his late old friend. That day, it was raining cats and dogs. Bailey lay on the ground, panting heavily, with a new scar on his face. Agino had one. "Are you all right?" Seal rushed out. Bailey turned his head away and said he was fine, but the person Seal ran to was Agino, not him. Seeing the two of them happily embracing made Bailey despair. After that, Bailey left in the night, and the Marquis felt that this was a good ending for both sides. 3 years later, Seal and Agino got married, and a baby was about to be born. Agino came home from work and told Seal about Bailey, who had become a sword master and had also taken revenge on the 3 families that pushed the Onyx family to ruin. "Yes, I have something to tell you too," Seal said with a thoughtful expression, making Agino a little nervous. It turned out that what Seal had been thinking about recently was naming their child. If it was a boy, Jamie, and if it was a girl, Sarah. And so, finally, after many years, Bailey and Seal met again. Jamie never expected his parents' past to be like a fairy tale. Who would have thought his old man could defeat someone so strong? This body of his definitely inherited its traits from his father. After the mother and children finished their chat, Archbishop Sephora arrived. He was happy to see the tomboy from back then, which made her feel shy in front of her 2 children. Jamie, being better at feigning innocence, knew how to greet him, while Sarah didn't like strangers and hid behind her brother. But when Anna was mentioned, she became very excited. The Archbishop said that Ricky always talked about Jamie, so it seemed they were the legendary best friends. Rush also added that Ricky really wanted to see Jamie again soon. Little did they know that he and Ricky had already met. Sable volunteered to lead them inside, so the Marquis and the Archbishop could speak. Before leaving, the Archbishop blessed Servalt's 2 children. What should we do now? The mother, who was just playing with her 2 treasures, spoke. She suddenly remembered that Jamie had once insisted on going to the giant fountain. Jamie then asked about the Myrrhine Forest, because Sable had warned him not to go there. How do you know about the Myrrhine Forest? Have you been going out there or something? His mother's eyes made Jamie change the subject. She didn't know why Sable would suddenly mention it to him. He just wanted me to be careful, Jamie said, turning his face away to avoid his mother's tense expression. She always reminded him not to go out alone, even though he was a mage, and then pointed towards the Myrrhine Forest. Jamie thought it was just an ordinary forest like any other, so why the fuss? But it's one of the 6 largest forbidden zones in the world. Another of them is the Great Arya Z Forest, located right behind Myrrhine. You could say Myrrhine is a part of it. Jamie's face darkened. It was highly likely that this was what Fear called the Dark Forest. His mother immediately pulled him back to reality. That's also the reason you can't go there, do you understand? Of course, Jamie said, but in reality, he was definitely going to go there. Tonight was the night. The time for Jamie to stir up trouble and explore the place that gave people such a terrible feeling. A chain of lightning bolts exploded from the sky and struck Mjolnir Forest. The culprit was none other than Jamie, but he couldn't use dark energy within this forest. Master, there's something behind you. Vina rushed forward, grabbing Jamie's shoulder while simultaneously using her leg to deal with